Hello. I've been reading the chat. That's why I started by laughing. Repty Chat's getting free promotion. Jobyensis first. Hello, everybody. How are we all doing today? I just want to do a quick shout out to the official sponsor of the podcast, Bug Factory. Link in description. Cheapest bugs in the UK. You want to breed mealworms, all that good stuff. They've helped me out. Go and show them some love. Follow them on Instagram. We have a last minute short notice guest today because I had a guest and then I didn't have a guest. And then I have another guest. How exciting for everybody. So we're going to be nerding out about monitors, but what's up, Michael? Michael's very excited for this one. Gary's finally here for me, showing love. I will be responding to comments and chat today because I know the guest, because he's actually arguably my best, if not the best, one of my two best friends, if not in the original group chat of the reptile hobby. So yeah, he won't mind if I ignore him to read the chat. But what's up, Dan? Appreciate you stopping in. You're coming out with the Fellowship of the Varanus. Well, we have a very special guest for you today, because arguably one of the greatest monitor collections, at least between us in the UK. No pressure. Riddler's in chat. What's good? Without further ado, it's Mr. MJH Exotics. Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Hello,
right?
everyone. Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. I'm all right. After my 4-hour nap on a Sunday, I'm feeling refreshed. So, how's your weekend?
Man.
I am getting old now. 30 next year, pushing it now. So, I'm getting on a bit. But how are you? How are the lizards? How's everyone
Yeah, not
doing?
too bad. They're good. Yeah, not too bad. It's just that we're only just saying that I've got lots of maintenance that I haven't done today, so I'm going to be doing that later, which is always delightful on a Sunday evening.
So, for everybody who doesn't know, do you just want to do a quick overview of who you are and what you keep?
Yeah, so I'm Matt. I'm in the UK. I've got a few bits and pieces. So I mainly started out with monitors. So I've got some prasinus, I've got some Beckeri, and I've got some Macraei as well. And then more recently, I've got a few more, slightly more niche things. So some Kingorum, and then also the Mitchellii, which are just behind me somewhere.
It's
amongst some other bits and pieces.
It's crazy how, like, what's the word? Flippantly, you just say, yeah, I've just got some Mitchellii, some Beckeri, some Macraei. We will get into it later, but we have a dedicated segment to Paul Wants Mitchellii, and we'll get into it later.
Paul's getting Mitchellii, that's the segment.
Paul's getting Mitchellii. We just need to, I need to sell my body. Oh, God, I don't know what I've done. I need to sell my body for lots of money to be able to afford them. But before we start, we will just go instantly into the quick fire questions. Just A, B, yes, no, up, down. So starting off, nice and simple. Snakes or lizards?
Lizards.
Money or time?
Time.
Mentally strong or physically strong?
Mentally strong.
Wild caught good, wild caught bad?
Oh, that's difficult. Depends. Wild caught in the right hands, wild caught are good.
I agree. Pro snake rack, no snake rack?
Pro snake rack. No, I'm joking. No, I'm not a fan of snake racks. No.
Take that, Riddler. Arid species or tropical species?
Oh, that's a tough one. Probably actually tropical. I think tree monitors have always been my first love, I would say, ever since I was little. So I would probably say, yeah, let's go tropical.
Until eventually the Kingorum take over, and when they become adult, you fall more in love with them.
Yeah, exactly. The little pocket rockets.
Pigs or goats?
Probably pigs, because of my youngest. He's obsessed with them, like properly obsessed.
Yeah, I think Fee will approve. Big reptiles or small reptiles?
Small, I think. I think even now, even with lots, I couldn't handle anything much larger than a tree monitor.
Well, your tree monitor, your Macraei is probably bigger than my biggest monitor at the minute anyway, so it's not
like... He's pushing a meter, to be fair.
Fee approves of the choice of pigs. See, she's always liked you. Big monitors or dwarf monitors?
Dwarf monitors. They have all the same characteristics.
In a much, much smaller space.
Yeah.
Instagram famous or YouTube famous?
Makes no difference to me. I'd probably, I guess, YouTube if you can get paid for it.
Now, this one is going to because we're friends, this one is very serious. Okay.
Yeah.
No matter what the guest says, but I will judge you for this one.
Okay.
No pressure. I
Far
still
away.
this with me. Pro Crocs or no Crocs as the shoes?
I'm gonna probably say, just because of what I do for work, no Crocs. I hate them.
Do you have to wear them at work?
Intermittently. Luckily, I'm not in the surgical side of it, so I don't wear them very often.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan, I'm afraid. And that's the end of the podcast.
I can't believe I let you feed Mango and you didn't even have Crocs on. And Michael, he doesn't even, honestly, I need to get new friends. Feisty or tame?
I don't really like the word tame. So let's go feisty.
And then finally, wild types or morphs?
Wild types.
Easy. Done.
Yeah, that's easy.
So Michael agrees, I'm assuming, for Crocs, and Riddler agrees. I'm not going to swear this early into the podcast, but you're both dickheads. So going into wild types and morphs, let's just start straight away with your newest. I think they're your newest. Let's start with the Kingorum, because obviously one of the only monitors that has a morph. How are you finding Kingorum?
I really like them. I must admit, they were one of these things which I've sort of wanted for a while, but I've never been that sure. And I've had a few of the other adapter in the past, and some people rave about them, and others say they're, I don't know, not all that. But actually, since I've got them, I would probably say they are rapidly becoming one of my favourites. They're just, I think it's the fact that they're just like little pocket rockets. They've got so much personality. And actually, I've only had them now. What must it be? Is it a couple of months, maybe?
Yeah,
Probably not even that, to be fair.
It's not been long. I remember you bringing them over like the day you got them, and I was like, they're so small.
I mean, I'll be honest, they're not good for my anxiety with animals getting out. Like, they are literally tiny, and every 5 minutes, I think one's got out. I think one's got out. I think one's got out.
Yeah.
But actually, touch wood, it seems to be all right so far.
Well, you did put them in a massive enclosure for their size from day one.
Probably wasn't one of my brightest ideas, I must admit.
But how is it though? Off. Are they using all the space, or are they?
Oh yeah, they're constantly, literally,
they are
every
using
corner, using the whole vid.
Oh, that's sick, because
so
the Kims, they don't use a lot. Baby Kims tend to hide just in the reed stack, and then they might venture out. So that's kind of cool, because the Kingorms are younger than the Kims, so that's cool that they're using all of it.
I must admit, I haven't, because I was debating whether I put a reed stack in there, but actually I haven't at the moment. And there's a tiny little bit of cork on them, and actually they use that intermittently just to bask under. And yeah, shout out to, I'm sure people have seen it, but shout out to Bailey and Bailey's backgrounds, who made the vid for me. Bailey's I don't know if he's in chat.
I'll put his link in the description after this podcast goes live.
Fair, he might still be on his way home. He was only here this afternoon.
Yeah. I won't spoil it, but he picked up an animal from Matt. I mean, the more we get into this conversation, anyone with 2 brain cells will be able to figure out which species it is when we're talking about what Matt gets breeding. But we have Gary saying, I'm pro Croc. I don't wear them often because I don't wear shoes often, but they're comfy to do. See? Croc.
They're comfy. I'll give you that. They are comfy.
They are. Well, I had a brand new pair on today, my little fancy lime green army ones, and they hurt my feet because they're brand new and they have like the little, I don't know, bubbles, nipples, whatever you call it, at the bottom. So I had to take them off, and I'm normally like barefoot as well, Gary. I'm like, other than when I'm dealing with Mango, because I'm a wilderness man, and she tried to attack me today. She actually like lunged from my feet, so thankfully I had Crocs on. But yeah, Kingorum are cool. I saw them recently. Same as yourself. I've always liked them, but I've never seen them before. And then I saw them recently, and I was really, really in love. Do you prefer, now you have both, you have the leucistics and the normals. Are you more for leucistic or more for normal?
I think before I had them, I was always very much, I prefer the leucistics. But actually, I think since I've had them, I think I prefer the brown, the sort of original. Actually, the patterns are far nicer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. I think I generally prefer the brown ones, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I do.
Not more in the UK, really.
I think I need to get some. I don't know how many different genetics there are, because I know there's a few people breeding them, but I don't know if the gene pools differently. So ideally, if I can get as close to unrelated from yours as possible, that would be great. But I don't know how feasible.
I think it's difficult. There are a couple of people breeding them who have got them from different places, but I suspect, long story short, I wouldn't be surprised if they all come from similar people in Europe, because there's not that many about in Europe these days. And actually, there was a guy, I think it was back in was before lockdown, the ham before lockdown. What was that, 2019, 2020?
It had been 19 because 2020 lockdown was
Yeah.
March. So yeah.
And that was when I picked up my pair of prasinus, but back then I think he was one of the only people that had seemed to have them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they've all come from the same guy or all very similar. So unfortunately, like with a lot of the slightly rarer animals, they've all got the same
Gene
same
pool from
bloodlines.
Yeah, and I don't think people make a conscious effort to outbreed them anyway. Sometimes you can't, which is what it is. You can't. But I don't think some people are as fussed, which is fine for people that have earlier in the genetics. But in 30 years' time, you end up with pilbaras that are like
I was literally
8 inches long.
I had the joy of having one of them, and the problem is they get to the point of where I had one that was nearly 2 years old, and the female started to lay eggs, and she was just too small to lay eggs, and she sadly passed away because she was literally like 12 inches.
It's crazy. When you like Google Jobyensis, you're like 16 to 18 inches, and people in chat are probably like, well, 12 inches to 16 inches, it's not that much in it, you know, it's only 4 inches, but everyone knows 4 inches makes a big difference. So when you've got the lizard that's obviously not prepared, and you see it as well with crosses and hybrids of Ackies, because I think it's red Ackies have bigger eggs. So if you have a female yellow to a male red, the eggs can be too big for them, even though they can hybridize and they can survive, but they're obviously not evolved to be genetically interchanged. So they just suffer through detriment of man trying to produce.
I was going to say, I've seen pictures of someone who's crossed them and they've had eggs where the female is laid. They've literally put a picture of the female laying with a male yellow Ackie and then a male red Ackie, and the eggs are nearly twice the size. And you think, well, you can see how she runs into trouble.
Yeah.
But
and there's not much difference in the size of the actual animals, but for some reason the eggs just seem to be bigger with reds. But like you say, if you're gonna, I don't really like crosses full stop. If you're gonna cross, at least have the female as a red.
Because I was going to say it's easier that way. Exactly.
Yeah, but then it's just it's one of those things. But I think I want to get King Gorum. I've been very much, obviously, people that don't know, you and I speak pretty much every single day about lizards and have done for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It's going to be hard for me to try and think of stuff that I don't already know. So I'm probably going to be repeating myself to stuff that I already know. But King Gorum for me, because when we first started speaking, I can't remember exactly what happened, but we were tree monitor keepers. Like you had Ackies, I had Ackies, and we were talking about tree monitors. And then obviously I've sort of slowly gone into the mangrove stuff. And now we've both seemed to sort of spear pointed towards Audatria. I don't really know how it's happened, but obviously you've started to get back into Audatria, and I'm really going back into Audatria. Now you keep Audatria and Prasinus complex. Do you still love the tree monitors as much as you once were, or are you like, I wish I kept more Audatria?
I think the tree monitors are always going to be sort of a soft spot. Even when I was little, it was always blue tree monitor was always like, for me, was like the pinnacle. Blue tree monitor. I never thought I'd ever imagine owning a tree monitor, let alone a blue tree monitor.
Let alone how many you've got now.
But I do like the Audatria in the way that, one, you can generally keep them in slightly smaller setups, so you don't need monstrous 6 foot by 6 foot by 3 foot setups to keep them. And actually, with the way the summers are going, they generally tolerate the heat better, which I think I'm going to run into issues this year with some of my animals because of the sheer heat. Partly because I'm in quite a small space and everything needs heat, and I suspect I'm going to start hitting 34, 35, which Audatria can probably tolerate relatively okay, whereas the Prasinus and the other bits and pieces might start to run into a bit of trouble.
It is a worry that I have now that I'm in a greenhouse, conservatory, but it's all glass, so it's something to be very cautious of. But like you say, the Ackies and the Kims, I'm going to be like, they'll be all right.
Yeah.
But then the Indonesian stuff, once they start creeping up over the 30s, it is a bit like, oh. And then, like you say, with our summers, if we have a summer remotely as hot as last year, we had like 37 degrees for 3 days where I was living. That was just like, I don't know. I think that's just shy of 100 for people in America, but over here in the UK, we're used to like 84.
Yeah, exactly.
So like 100 is is ridiculous. And Gary's just told everybody, I don't know where it was, to put the Crocs in boiling water. Apparently, it makes them fit your feet perfectly. So I just wanted to let everyone know that wears Crocs.
Presumably cool them down first.
Well, I think he said put them in, and then so for 2 minutes and then let them cool off. Exactly. Safety from Dr. Matt. Michael, he's living vicariously through. We brought Michael into the monitor group, and now he's got the monitor bug, all thanks to me and Matt, and he wants everything that we keep. And I think I said hi, Bam, but hi, Bam. And what's up, Amy? Any questions for Matt, everyone, or myself? Between us, we keep a fair few different species. So if you've got any questions or anything like that, let me know. Michael thinks that you need more Adatria, Matt.
I do, but I haven't got the room, as we have been discussing on numerous occasions.
If you had room, what species you getting?
How many am I allowed?
2 more species of all monitors that you can own. What are you getting?
That are attainable.
Yeah, they're attainable.
Attainable in the UK.
Yeah, so for example, let's do 2 that you know space and money not an issue. For example, like a Croc monitor, and then 2 which is realistic for your situation. If you had a little bit more space, obviously outside of like having a massive room for like a Croc monitor.
So 2 that are attainable in the UK at present. I would quite like a pair of Kims.
Mm-hmm.
I've never owned I've never owned Kims. I've had Pilbaras and Akis and a few other bits, but Kims, I think it's just the way they look. They're slightly different. They get slightly larger. And then the other, what else would I keep? One other. Depends what your definition of attainable is.
You got to go for yellows or biax, surely.
Well, I was going to say golden spotted, but at the moment that's not attainable.
Yeah. Fair comment.
But I think I personally would take biax over yellows if I could get them. I think they are achievable, but I think they'd need a bit of work in the background.
Yeah, I would biax for me over Bohemii or Bohemi, however you want to say it.
And true biax as well, like the really nice bright ones, not the sort of slightly grey
with the webbing. Yeah, they're super nice. Michael says he'll give you a Kim one day. So
I need the space. That's the problem. If you buy me a bigger house as well. If it comes with a bigger house, you've got a deal.
He can buy you a house like his neck of the woods. It'd be like £6 or £8, something like that. Problem is, we live down south, so houses are like at least triple the price. So, but what are you gonna do with 26 baby Akis, Paul? Well, good news. It sounds morbid, but a few of the eggs have gone bad. So thankfully, it won't be at least. I think I've lost 4 eggs already, which I'm completely fine with, and I've separated 10 out. So I'm probably only going to hatch 10, because I don't think it's ethical to hatch 26. So I'm going to probably only hatch 10, or at least try to hatch 10. I have 5 left of this clutch now, so I don't have to move them on for 4 months, so I can hold them for quite a while, so it's not an issue. But yeah, I'm probably going to just hatch the 10.
That must be one of the biggest clutches, isn't it? I've not heard of a clutch of 30.
Yeah, I generally don't know. I was going to look into it. I was going to look in, because I've had a clutch of 24 before. Because I looked back and it was 24, and I thought that was right up there. And this is 27 eggs, 26 of which look good. 1 was clear slug.
Because I remember a couple in America, I think they were pushing mid 20s. I don't know if they hit 26, 27 though.
Yeah, so it was 27 eggs, 1 slug. Obviously 26 aren't fertile, but it's still 27 egg clutch. Yeah, I don't think there is a first. I don't know. It'd be cool if I imagine that world record, like putting Akis on the map, world record Aki clutch. It's crazy how they can have, like, when I was digging that clutch up, I was expecting, she was huge, so I was expecting maybe like 15, 18. And it just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And I was like, how on earth is she? Because they're not small eggs either. Like they were normal size Aki eggs. So how on earth she's fit 26 eggs? Like, I don't understand. Like, if Akis were still like in their heyday, I'd be rich and I'd be buying probably our next conversation animal in a minute.
I still remember paying £200 an Aki.
Yeah,
gone are those days.
It's probably because they have 26 eggs in a clutch, and people like put them I could get a clutch of Aki eggs like every 45 days. Oh, wasn't I? I was getting like,
yeah.
and I was even putting the male in because I was like, I don't want them to be fertile. And then the female had an issue laying the slug. So I was producing like a clutch every 45 days.
To be fair, now everyone is producing Akis. There's just so many who are just churning clutch after clutch after clutch out. And I think we're going to end up give it a year or so, and we'll end up with like the bearded dragons. They'll all drop off. No one will want to breed them. And then give it 4 or 5 years, you won't be able to get hold of them because no one will have bred them. And then they'll be back to where they were again.
Yeah, no, I had a lady come over today to pick up one. And she was very excited. Never had an Aki before. Always wanted an Aki. So I'm going to continue to breed them because it is nice. Because there are people out there that do still want them and stuff. But like you say, I don't think it's ethical to be producing animals. I won't sell my pair because I love my pair. I think the Akis are great.
They're better than bearded dragons.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was as I party last night, actually, funny enough, and a guy. It was so weird because basically, long story short, I was at my boss's wife's birthday party, and my boss's brother-in-law watches my videos with his kids, and I didn't really know that. So he come over to me and he's like, "Oh, I love your videos," and I was a bit like, "Oh God," but like not in a like, I don't know, just like my social anxiety. So yeah, he did actually because my boss was like, "Why don't you get him to sign your boob?" And he's like, "Oh yeah," like all joking and drunk and stuff, but. His kid was telling me about, and they've just recently lost their bearded dragon. They've got a Leo and a beardy. And basically, I was selling him an Aki. I was like, get an Aki. He was like, oh, 100%. I don't know, yeah. And then I was 100%. Saying about it, this, that, and the other. And then he was like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. I'll message you. I'll let you know this, that. So I will continue to breed them, but I'm not doing it for money or like, oh, look at me, I'm a breeder. They happen to breed because I keep them together. So that's all there is to it, really. So we've got another question. I'm making plans soon. Have a bigger enclosure for my Jobyensis. How exciting. In your opinion, what would be a good size to build her? So I'll answer this in a second because I keep a Jobyensis. But what would you, off the top of your head, Matt, because I know you like jobbies, what sort of size setup would you like for a Jobyensis?
I think if you don't know the sex, that makes it a bit more difficult because the difference between a male and a female is quite considerable.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of males being approaching 5 foot, and then you can get females that are hovering around 3.
Yeah.
If you have no idea, then you obviously have to plan for the worst, which is a male at 5 foot, and then I think you're looking at probably a minimum. I think the depth is underrated. I think that's the key. I think a lot of people you see keeping in 2 foot, 2.5 foot deep. I think if you've got a 5 foot lizard, I think you want to be looking at least 4 foot.
Yeah, or 5 foot deep. Yeah.
Or even 5 foot deep.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing it was years and years ago. There was a post, I think it was on reptile forums, where there was this guy that had a peach throat and he had it all fully like electronic. Everything was on timers. And I think it was a 6 foot cube, I think, from what I remember.
I'm not sure I've seen that.
But it was like everything was on a timer. The pump was on a timer. The lights were on a timer. It looked incredible, to be fair. And I think that was around 6 foot cube, but it wasn't sort of a full size adult. Because it's the terrible thing. If I was looking at getting a jobby when I got my my prasinus, and I remember I went when I was at Ham, and like I asked 3 people, I think, were selling them, and at the time I had for the adults, I think I had a 6 foot by 6 foot by 2 foot deep, I think, and everyone was like, "Oh, that'll be fine to keep as an adult. You keep a pair in there, no problem." And I almost bought them, to be fair, had I not got the prasinus. But I'm so glad I didn't, because 2 foot deep is not deep enough for anything.
No.
Even a female, really, even a 3 foot female, it's just definitely not the depth.
So we've got Repty Chat saying that a jobby is Scottish slang for no, that's the wrong one. Hello, we've got saying it's Scottish slang for having a shit. I call them jobbies, or let's jobies. But then you start to sound like, in my head, Joby sounds like something from Star Wars, like even though it's Obi, but I don't know. So basically, I 100% agree with Matt. But to answer your question, Toad is a female, and I will be building her a 7 foot long, 4 foot deep, 6 foot tall, I think. And if I'm completely honest, I think that's too small, but that's the biggest I can give her. Without selling an animal, that's the biggest I can give her. So my advice would be to literally go as big as you physically can, because as Matt said, males will get 5 foot. A lot of it is tail, but there's still a 5 foot lizard. I honestly believe if a a lizard is 4 foot deep, it should be at least a 4 foot deep enclosure. If it's 5 foot deep, it should be at least a 5 foot deep enclosure. And then ideally, it should be at least 3 times as long. So if you've got a 3 foot lizard, it should be ideally in a 9x3 or equivalent maths square 4 size. And then again, if it's a boreal, you want it to be at least 3 foot in height. So you're talking like for a 3 foot lizard, you're talking like a 9x3x9. It's not feasible, but I would like that sort of size, but it's just not doable. And that's why I'm sort of regretting buying lizards that are 3 to 4 foot, because now I've got to put them in like 8x4x8s, which is it's stupid, but it's just sad reality of what we do. So, but yeah, I don't really know if there's any other questions. I'm steering that. Gonna drop some jobies off at the pool. They do like to swim. They definitely do like to swim. So, do you regret, now knowing what you know, do you regret not getting the Jobyensis? Because that was before you had pretty much anything that you have now, isn't it, outside of Ackies?
Yeah, so I all I had at that. No, did I even have Ackies at the time? I think I had some Euromastics and a pair of Fijis. I think that was all I had at the time.
How old were you when you started keeping?
So when I first started keeping, I was 13, I think, and I went down to the low, saw a bearded dragon, bought it, put it in a terrible fish tank, put it with a terrible T8 unit, and a basking spot that probably wasn't hot enough. Yeah. And to be fair, it lived till it was 17, I think, when it died.
That's not bad.
So it's only died recently. I think it was 2 years ago, because it was living with my parents for a bit whilst I was at uni. So it did pretty well, to be fair. I've got no idea how, because I'll be completely honest, it didn't have the best setup. I think it was a 4 foot long by maybe 2 foot high and 18 deep, something like that. So it was still a reasonable size.
I mean, some people keep it smaller now, so it's not bad.
But equally, it wasn't the best setup. Yeah. And then what did I do? Then I bought a milk snake when I was.
You used to have a snake.
I used to have a snake. I've been banned from snake. Yeah, so I had a milk snake when I was 16, I think, and it escaped.
Okay.
Not ideal. Yeah. So it basically, I had one of those old, like the plastic ones with little
phonariums.
Yeah. And basically the latch on the top broke.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I used to put something on top of it to hold the lid down just to make sure it didn't get out. And I think so. I don't know if it was my parents or brother, someone was moving it, and then took the lid off. Next thing I know, I get a phone call whilst I'm at college. My mum's going, can't see the snake in the tank. I was like, it'll be there. It'll just be buried under the soil somewhere. So I definitely can't see it. And then I came home and lo and behold, it had escaped. And then, funnily enough, I was about 6 months later, I used to do swimming, and one of my parents was talking to this other lady. She's like, "Oh, you'll never guess what? We found this really brightly coloured snake in under our fridge last week." And I was like, "No, it can't be." Turns out they live across the road and 2 doors up, and they'd found my snake 3 weeks ago, but they'd obviously given it to the RSPCA, and by that point it disappeared. But it was mad. So it survived all that time. So it survived 5 months, presumably without eating, but it just stayed under their fridge, keeping warm.
Christ.
I thought it was long gone I thought it just gone into the floorboards, never to be seen again.
Jesus.
So that's the only snake I've ever kept.
That's probably why you have such PTSD and anxiety about lizards escaping.
Oh God, yeah.
Because I had a snake get out when I was 15, 16 as well, actually. My nan brought me one. I really wanted a pet, really wanted to put a pet. My parents wouldn't let me. So my nan brought me, I think it was a rat snake, I can't remember, a little hatch thing in a phonarium with just a heat mat and stuff. And my dad was like, "No, he's not having it. And my nan was like, "No, I've brought it now. You have to." So anyway, I got the snake. Within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it was gone. Just gone. And that was it. That little shred I hope that I had was gone. You had a snake get out 2 years ago, man. Yeah, we had our milk snake get out at our old house. We found it in the bathroom. It came slithering out from behind the sink. No, was it the sink or the toilet? I can't remember. But damn it, Fee, stop sharing all the secrets. We had a tree monitor get out as well. We've had so many animals get out. I'm a terrible keeper.
And then I didn't keep anything for quite a while. So then I went off to college for. So I had it whilst at college. Then went to university for 5 years. Didn't have anything. Graduated. Then my first 2 years as a job was in South Wales. So we lived apart because I got married just after after university. We lived apart for 2 years while she was still at university. And then I bought Ackies whilst we were apart, obviously, because I suspect had I bought them whilst we were together, it probably wouldn't have gone down very well. So I had two Ackies at that point, kept them, and then sort of 2 Ackies became a couple of Fijis, and then the Fijis became Euromastic, then Euromastic, and then it just went on from there, basically. And then it's only really in the last 2 years, probably 2 years, no, probably even in the last year, where things have just sort of exponentially gone up. But it wasn't even that long ago. As I say, all I had was a Euromastics, a couple of Ackies, and some Fijis, and that was it.
It is crazy because you and I both reflect sometimes, because like we've been speaking before we had the collections that we have, so it's sort of crazy that we've sort of figured out how that we look back sort of almost together, and you go, remember when we just had, because it's so easy to like take it for granted. So it's good that we have each other to sort of go, yeah, but look what you have, because sometimes, like I say, with the mangroves, I take them for granted, and they're one of my favorite animals on the planet, and I'm just like, yeah, they're my mangroves, because you sort of forget that you've got them because you come and feed them, water them, clean them every day, and it's so easy to take what you like. You go, oh yeah, just my blue trees. Like you've always wanted blue trees, and now you've got 3.
3 blue trees, yeah,
which is just mind-boggling. So, are they all that you would hope them to be?
Yes and no. So I would say I found them generally a lot more shy than, like, particularly the Beckerai come out constantly. I'm starting to get somewhere with the 2, what are they now, 6-month-old. And they'll happily sit out while I'm in there, and they'll tongue feed and they'll come out into my arm and that sort of stuff. But prior to that, I rarely saw them, to be fair. I forget the number of times where I would come in and be like, shit, I haven't seen them for a week, and they definitely still in there, and then take all it apart, and you'd find them. But actually, they are still stunning, don't get me wrong, and they are still exactly what I wanted, and I still think they are, in my opinion, the best tree monitor. But they are, not quite the same as what I anticipated. I fell in love with the Beckerai more than I thought I would.
I was very excited when you got those.
I think it's just the fact that I didn't expect them to be quite so confident. So, like, the male will quite happily come out, do what you like. He has no fear at all, even from about 6 months old.
I'm going to try and find him. I can't see you anymore, but you. Yeah,
that's right.
So there you go. This is tongue. I think that's a video. Yeah, it's a video. How do I get back?
And for those of you who don't realise, it's called tongue because for whatever reason his tongue is backwards. So I thought he was born without a tongue, but actually you look and it's basically that his tongue for some reason goes back down his throat. So once it came out, which was bizarre.
Yes.
But I've got no idea why.
So there you go. He's an absolute beast. He's getting big as well, which
I was going to say he's pretty big. In that video, I think he was, how old was he? 14 months old, I think, at that point.
Oh God!
And he's already bigger than my male prasinus.
You don't post enough, which is your problem because you have some amazing animals, and you don't. So there's your fancy Viv for your King Gorham for everyone. That's
what Bailey built.
So that's what Matt has, some beautiful baby King Gorham. And I don't know if you watched my podcast last week. I don't mind if you did or didn't, but I was showing oh wow, look, it's my tree monitor. This is our project, everyone.
I think he's asleep.
That's my beautiful boy. I was showing the video of your baby prasinus digging.
Oh, where he was digging with his hand.
Yeah, because we were talking about prasinus. So
I think that's way back somewhere, I think.
Yeah, I said it was good because you never post, so it was easy to find. I was there, literally to the right, but this is the video I wanted to find. And this inspired me to do this with Kermit. So I stole it from Matt, everyone. But yeah, it's so cool to see. He's much bigger than that now as well, isn't he?
He's in the last, I would say, few months, he's really started to put, especially his head. I do not fancy getting a bite from him. I think it'd be far worse than any of the others I've got.
He's an absolute beast. He's an absolute beast. And then we will
But
just
no, I
show
do.
the baby tree monitor while I'm on here, and then we can go back to like talking. But I like that I can share the Instagram because it helps that to sort of
Yeah.
we can get into this because I mean we haven't even spoken about this. We're sort of just I need to zoom in. Gone on a tangent. So for those that don't know, Matt breeds prasinus, and he bred my little baby Kaida, who is now getting very big, and we're still very hopeful for a female.
It's mad to think, what, 10 months? No, how old is she?
I think she was born in July. So yeah,
July.
April, May, June. So 8
9,
months.
8, 9, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so as we can see, this is one of Matt's little babies, and it was. I need to go back on there because you did say how old it was, but I forgot. 9 weeks old. So that's a 9-week-old prasinus, just digging for food, which shows that it's clearly an innate behavior rather than a learnt behavior. Because some people think that they learn it from other ones in the wild, but this baby wouldn't have had anyone from learn it from. This is a good question from Dan. So I feel like you're better to equipped to answer this one, Matt. Do all black trees come from the same person?
So no. So there are that I know of. So I got mine from I'm not sure, should I say?
Private collection.
Private collection. And they, as far as I'm aware, I'm the only ones that have them other than the people breeding them. Then there's a couple of others people. So Chris Applin at Rare Reptiles. So he's got some, I think he's got some available at the moment, actually. So he's breeding them.
He does.
And as far as I'm aware, the parents are unrelated. And then there's lots of pairs knocking about that people have got. So I think there was a pair in Southampton Reptiles.
Yeah.
They had a trio, actually. I'm not sure if they've still got the trio, if they sold one.
I think they sold a pair on. I think they sold their wild caught male and one of the females on.
And I think they've had eggs, but I'm not sure that they've necessarily had any babies, to my knowledge.
No.
And then there are the odd sort of single animals knocking about here and there, but for some reason, not many people have bred the Beckerite. So that's probably about it that I know of. I'm sure there are probably other people out there that have them and may or may not have bred them, but to my knowledge, there's only really those two that are sort of regularly. Oh, sorry, and obviously Dawn's got some as well.
I was thinking Dawn. She's produced them, hasn't she, before?
I think so. I'm sure I've seen a picture on online of her babies. So yeah, she's definitely produced them.
So there's 3 to 4 people. Well, 3 to 4 people working with them seriously, and currently 2 to 3 people producing them.
And they must be about, because it was only 4 or 5 years ago when Crystal Palace were getting them in reasonably regularly, the wild caught animals.
Yeah.
Some of them obviously will probably have died, but I suspect a reasonable number must still be about somewhere. I know there's a single animal in Ridgeways at the moment, and then there's another single. Where else have I seen one? There's another single black in a shop.
It's not.
No.
Yeah, there's one. Oh God. I know what you mean. I forget. I know what you mean.
I think there is another one somewhere.
It's like Essex Way, isn't it?
I think so. I forget what it's called.
I'm sure there's definitely another shop. King Gorham, but yeah, there's a couple of the odd animals kicking around. Following into the good question from Michael, do tree monitors, the common 3, which I'm assuming are blacks, blues, and yellows? No, blacks, blues, and greens. Do they still come in wild caught? To my knowledge, they can come in still, but it's a lot harder.
So my understanding was that Crystal Palace was supposed to be getting some in, but it took so long to get the paperwork that they became too big to then come in. I don't know if that's true or not.
I heard it was true as well.
But I mean, it's definitely doable. I just think there's so much paperwork now, because I remember there was a post, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago where someone was posting about prasinus that was supposed to be coming in an import, and they sort of never materialized. I don't know why. And again, there was someone else there's lots of imports that are supposed to happen, but for whatever reason, they never seem to have tree monitors on them. I'm sure if you had them.
It's 15 centimeters now to vent. If they're over 15 centimeters, they can't come in. And then, like you say, the Crystal Palace, they had the quota and the CITES importation for Beckerite. But then I think it took so long to sort the actual shipment out that the animals they grew bigger than 15 centimeters, like you say.
And then, then obviously we're at a position now where I don't know when the last lot of tree monitors came in. It's probably
2018, 2019.
There was the load of Beckerite that came in. I don't think anything's come in recently. Hopefully that will change because
we've had an Indo shipment, obviously in December, with the mangroves. So obviously things are starting to come back in. It's just one of them things, though, isn't it? It's that same question of wild caught good, wild caught bad. Do they go to people to try and breed them, or do they just end up in pet only homes and then in 5 years' time they're not dead, but a lot of people don't post, which is fair enough.
I think the problem will be the money as well. I think I suspect shops, because there's none about, they will be selling them at captive bred prices. So I think you'll be looking at minimum $2,500 an animal, which is just stupid money, really, for a wild caught animal, especially.
Oh, for sure, that could drop dead in bloody 6 weeks.
Well, captive farmed,
kidnapped from the wild. So we have Ben. I've always wanted a lace monitor. If I could set up an enclosure in the shed, I live on a farm. Yeah, that would be cool. Do you like laces, Matt? Are you a fan of laces?
I do like laces. I think I'd probably go Bell's phase over.
No,
I think so. Yeah, I do like Bell's.
I like the dark ones, the super dark ones.
But again, your issue is, well, one, finding them. I think I know of, one, possibly two people that have them.
Yeah, I know two people in the UK, they've got them.
And then there's a few knocking about in Europe, but the prices, they're all over the place. I've heard people getting them for $5,000. I've heard people paying $25,000. And then you've got all the hassle of trying to find someone who's reliable enough that you can pay them all that money and then ship them over with the correct CITES. I suspect your most likely or easiest way to get hold of them is hoping that someone here breeds them. And if that happens, I suspect they're not going to be cheap.
No, there'll be a lot of money. They will. Yeah, I remember seeing the baby at Ridgeway. Stunning animal.
Yeah,
stunning animal. I reckon I'd sell half my collection for a lace, but I can't imagine how much they'd be. But like you said, they're gonna be
it's gonna be stupid money,
north of 10-15 grand. They're gonna be up there.
I don't know much about how big are their clutches. I don't know enough about them.
I think they have 12 to 18 eggs. I imagine. Yeah.
Because there's not going to be many people in a position to be able to buy them. One, because of the price, and two, because of the size they need.
Yeah, they need a big vid for sure. For sure. I can see another question. Currently, someone is building an 8x4x4 for my Savannah monitor. I've got the room to do the same size for my Joby. That means poo. Missed the height you suggested. So 8x4 would be a decent footprint. I would go to the ceiling if I was you, just because Jobyensis, they do like to climb.
I think that is well, people don't mention it enough how actually they are arboreal to a certain extent.
Oh, 100%. Mine lives solely up high. Yeah. It sleeps up high. It's always up high. Will come to the floor, but mine loves to climb. We have Father Blue in the chat, everyone. Is the tree monitor market alive in the UK? Do they move fast, or do they tend to just sit? Well, I will pass this away to Matt as a tree monitor breeder. What you saying to that,
I think it depends. So previously, I would say they never really hit the market. You had to know someone who was breeding them, and they never really got advertised, and they would just disappear. More recently, I mean, there must be a market for it because they're still selling. I must admit, mine have sat for a while, but then I'm not in masses of rush.
You also don't advertise at all.
No,
you literally you all of your sales are through word of mouth, and then when I say in word of mouth, like someone go, "Do you want a tree monitor?" I go, "Yeah, Matt," and then they go, "Okay," and then buy it. So I think if you advertise properly, I think yours would sell quicker than they do. But you're, like you say, you're never in a rush to sell them. So.
And if you look at prices, like there's people. So at the moment, there are shops selling prasinus for $2,500 and people are buying them immediately, but I still to this day don't understand it. If you look on Pre-Loved, what we're talking about a month or so ago, there were a couple that were around the 1,400 mark, and they were available when people were paying $2,500 from shops, which to me is mad.
That blows my mind.
if you are looking for something that high end, surely you're doing your research and having a look and seeing what prices are elsewhere. It's not the sort of thing you walk into a shop and go, oh, yeah, fancy one of those.
Yeah,
Although
no,
I do know of someone who essentially did that, who basically I think had more money than sense,
you must do if you're spending $2.5
and is
grand.
already selling it.
Yeah, I mean, the black trees that are for sale at the moment, there's a couple of baby black trees for sale at the moment.
That
They're
Chris
not,
has got, yeah.
yeah, they're not moving. And if I'm completely honest, I don't mind speaking my mind, so I'll speak it. I think all tree monitors are slightly overpriced at the moment.
Definitely.
And I think the economy over here, like inflation is the highest it's ever been in my lifetime. It might have been, I can't comment for full stop, but in the last 28 years, inflation is the highest it's been. The pound doesn't go anywhere at the moment. Electricity is crippling. So being able to afford a reptile, 1 or 2 reptiles is fine, everything in moderation. But if you have a lot of reptiles, it's a big outlay every month. And then to spend another, let's just say 1,500 to $3,000, depending what species you're buying, on a lizard, plus the enclosure, which is going to cost you the same again. It's just a lot of money that if people have got it, they're keeping it in their pockets because we don't know what's around the corner. So I think that's why a lot of stuff isn't selling. People are probably being a bit more conservative with the money. But
it's
because, like
interesting,
you
in
say,
Europe it flies out.
yeah, last year, everything was just sell. Like green trees were a lot higher in price. Black trees were more. They were going. Blue trees were going. But then also, we don't get importation like the US. So
No.
we only have... So outside of you, and then obviously Alan at the time, no one was breeding prasinus. So if you wanted a prasinus in COVID times, you had to.
I was going to say,
buy
I
it
could have
from...
charged 2,500 and I think people would have paid it.
Yeah, you had
It's
to. You had no
madness.
choice. And it's the same
Absolute
now
madness.
with the black trees. Like, they're not here. So if you want one, you have to pay the asking price. But it's just a case of finding the person that wants it. I want them. I just can't afford the asking price. So I don't get them, you know? So I think a lot of people are in that boat. And like anything, people don't buy. They start to creep down. People buy, and then the supply there's not enough supply. There's too much more demand. So then they creep up. And so I think the market's coming down to where it needs to be, is my
opinion. It will come down in the next few years. I think once, hopefully, more people start. I know of at least 2 or 3 people who have got eggs cooking potentially. Obviously, eggs don't necessarily mean babies, but certainly there should be a few more people breeding them. But in Europe, like I was talking to someone about ham that's just gone, and prasinus were 2,500 there, and they were literally like
selling
like 2,500 euros, which is
a lot,
ridiculous, especially when you think they were 500 a few years ago. I say a few years ago,
like
5 years ago,
2017, something like that. Yeah. Right. Similar onto the tree monitors. Dan's followed up with similar for blues. How big do you guys think the blood pools, the genetic pools? So how diverse? For me, I think they're not too bad because a lot of the original stuff's wild caught. But like I say, I'll let Matt take that one because he's again the keeper.
I think a lot of it is difficult to know. I know obviously a large proportion of blue trees that are in the UK have come from one person who's had quite a lot of success with them. But
especially prasinus.
And prasinus. But then it's difficult to know where parents have come from, because obviously people don't generally tend to document where the adult pair has come from. They just sort of say their parents are unrelated. I suspect a lot of people who say parents are unrelated actually are in fact not related, because the vast majority have come from ham. They picked them up. Like I picked up my 2 female prasinus. Luckily I managed to get an unrelated male, but it's difficult because the imports from McRae haven't been for some time, as far as I'm aware. So obviously all those adults came in. The question is I guess how many of that? It might just be that someone managed to get a pair breeding, and that's what's supplied the majority of the market. But equally, I think there must be a reasonable bloodline. I'm sure there's enough variation of McRae at the minute, and we have. Well, one thing is not that it necessarily means it, but there's no one's particularly run into issues with sort of infertile clutches or problems with hatching or that suggests inbreeding, but equally that can be way down the line.
Yeah.
Like we have with Ackies.
Speaking of, hot topic again from Father Blue. What do you think tree monitor prices should be in the US? It's got, so I'll say what I think, and you can see if you could agree or disagree with me, Matt.
Yeah.
So before I say money, obviously, one, I don't like the idea that we value animals. I find that weird. I do it. I breed. I put a value on an animal. I just find that concept that we value a certain animal more than others. So just with that caveat out of the way, they're worth what someone's willing to pay. So, and what I mean by that is the sense that someone, for example, there are black tree monitors in the UK for sale right now for £2,000. I personally think that's too much, but that's because I'm not willing to pay it. So that doesn't mean it's too expensive. It just means it's too expensive for me. And I think people don't understand that. I think some people are like, oh, it's too expensive. It's not too expensive. It's just too expensive for you. Now, if that black tree monitor doesn't sell for 6 months, then it probably is too expensive. So then you drop the price to say 1,800. And then if someone snaps it up, it's not too expensive because it's sold. But then on the same breath, £2,000 is a lot of money for the to let's put it into perspective. The average salary in the UK take home monthly probably is what, £1,400. That's
somewhere around there, isn't it?
So you're talking saving, someone would have to save 6 to 8 months, because obviously you can't save your whole month's salary. So you're talking someone has to save 6 to 8 months to a year to buy a lizard. Is that right? Is that wrong? But that's just where my mind is on it. What about you, Matt?
So I think at the moment they're too high. I think it's getting that right balance between not being so expensive that you price the majority of people out of it, but then equally not being so low that, as Michael has said, that it's an impulse buy.
Yeah.
They're not as hardy as some of the other animals that you can keep. Don't get me wrong, I don't think they're particularly complicated. If you do your research, you understand what you need to provide, you give them the right setups. I don't think they're particularly difficult.
No.
But equally, they're not the sort of thing you can go out and just stick in a viv and you'll be fine. I think they were probably around the right sort of figure a few years ago, I reckon around the 600-700-ish.
Yeah.
Sort of not quite your Aki prices, a little bit more than your Adatria, but not so stupid that, I mean, the shops recently, even here, that were selling $3,500 for a baby Macraei. I think they bred
Dumb.
one.
Yeah, dumb.
And people were just paying it, or there's talk of people spending $10,000 on 2 animals from a particular shop, which is just absolute madness.
Yeah.
But
it's just greed. It's just greed. Yeah. There's, if people are going to pay it. So with my answer, obviously, it's only worth what someone's willing to pay. If someone does have a lot of money and they want it, it doesn't make it worth that. But then, like you've just said and Gary said, it's a good thing though, Father Blue, because it keeps the newbies away from killing animals that have no. See, I don't disagree with that. But then also,
got to start somewhere though.
Yeah, and also, I'm not a newbie keeper. I can't afford them. So you've got to give and take, you know. I have no money at the minute, like none. So if I wanted any animals, I can't afford them. And am I going to be able to do something great with the species? I hate sort of saying it may sound egotistical, but probably. Like one day I could probably breed, for example, black trees. I probably could. Reality is I'm probably not going to be able to until Matt breeds them and I steal his babies. But I just can't afford them. Just can't afford them. So you've got to take the good. You've got to take the good with the bad, I think. So, it stops. Yeah, see, stops good keepers keeping them. I'm going to let you all argue in the chat. Okay, hang on, wait. We've got another question from Father Blue. Do you think if the prices go down too much, the tree monitors will become more disrespected animal? For example, most keepers go all out with enclosure to pick one.
I guess my part of me thinks sometimes that the animal needs to be as expensive as the setup. I think as a general rule of thumb is not a bad thing. So if you've got an animal that, I don't know, say, because realistically, if you want to set up a tree monitor to the best you can with LEDs, full heating, basket spots, the full shebang, you're spending probably £1,500 realistically to get a reasonable for an adult animal. Yeah. If someone's paying £1,500, I would like to think for £1,500, £2,000, £2,500, whatever they pay for an animal, I would like to think that they would spend £1,500 on the setup. Whereas if I partly agree that if the animals dropped to, I don't know, £200, £300, £400, are we then going to start seeing prasinus kept in a 4x2x2 potentially? But again, it then
I
stops
think you
good
see it, and
keepers.
you think you see it anyway though. Like obviously there
Yeah,
is a limit because you do see cheap animals kept in cheap enclosures. I agree, but we've seen prasinus kept in terrible enclosures,
yeah,
so it
yeah.
doesn't.
I don't think it'll stop
Yes,
it.
no, it will. It will. I agree. It'll increase it, but it will never. It will never stop it. He's saying my internet's got on the go slow. Obviously, we can't comprehend this, Eddie, because obviously we're in a completely different part of the world, and the economies and the wages and everything's so different. But he's saying in America it's 3,500 to 4K. But obviously over here, it's like someone said to me the other day, like around what was it? A cost of an enclosure. They were like, it's $1,000 in Australian dollars, and they were like, is that a good price? I was like, I don't have a clue, because obviously it's irrelevant because I'm in the UK. So that enclosure in the UK might be 400. So it's a good price if you see it as a good price. And that's how I see it. If you really want something, get into contact with a good breeder, but get on a waiting list and just save. Like, if you really want it, you'll pay the money for it. And if you think to yourself, oh, it's too much money, then you're not going to buy it. And that's the same like with me with the black trees. I'm just not going to buy them because they're just too much money. So, I mean, and we're sort of on tree monitors, but we'll get onto it. Same with me and Mitchellite. They're just too much money. I just can't afford them. So, as much as I do, Paul does want Mitchellite. I just can't afford them. So, as Matt looks back at his Mitchellite.
Yeah, it's out. I wondered what it was. The female's finally come out, so I don't have to dig the enclosure to pieces again because I'm scared that she's got out.
Are the lights still on in that one, are they?
No, they're off, but I think because I've got these lights on, she's still out.
She's wondering what's going on. So, and then Michael's saying a 50 to £100 lizard is an impulse. A £500 tree monitor wouldn't be disrespected. See, I think it would, but not to the everyday keeper.
So, I mean, you look at mangroves. Mangroves were what, 400 in some places, and people impulse bought them, and I'm sure they'll end up in 4-foot vivs.
Yeah.
Some of them, unfortunately.
Yeah. So
I don't think it does stop them necessarily.
No,
it's likely.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I'm just making sure I haven't missed anything. I honestly say that I'd have a ton of monitors if I had the money. It'd be best. It wouldn't be best for the animals. Smaller collection. Yeah. So how are you finding? Because obviously your collection is growing, same as mine, exponentially. How are you finding the increased costs and everything? Are you in the sense of?
I would say I am probably at my limit, maybe slightly over my limit. So it's not, the cost is painful, don't get me wrong, but I breed my own roaches, so food bills is generally a bit better.
Yeah.
And because everything is relatively closely confined, it heats each other. So actually, from an electricity point of view, don't get me wrong, it's still a reasonable amount, but it's not the worst I've ever seen. I think the biggest issue is time. And that is what I'm starting to find more and more, is that actually the amount of I can spend 2 hours every evening in here, whether that's just changing water, feeding, sorting the soil out, moving people, moving the vibs, changing the bulbs. And you just I spend hours and hours here. Whereas before I had only a couple of animals, you go in, you feed them, and it's pretty much 20 minutes or whatever. Now I've got the leeches up there, so they need to get fed every other day. Then you've got the others they're all on different food as well, which is my own stupid doing, really.
Yeah.
I should have just got them all straight onto all on the similar sort of sizes and roaches, but time I think is the biggest issue. And I think I've got to a point now where I think I've realized that actually this is it, that I cannot do anymore. If I buy any more, I will not be able to provide what I should be for my animals. I'll neglect them, whether that's not changing their water or not, I don't know, feeding them as much, or not doing the substrate, or not checking
Missing
up on them, or not doing
whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I must admit, I'm in the same, because obviously I've been ill recently, which can't be helped. Like sometimes, especially I've got a chronic illness, so sometimes I'm ill out of nowhere. And my reptiles did suffer for it. Like they were still getting sprayed, and I did change their waters and stuff. But there was a couple of days where I didn't do anything. And for the most part, now and then that is okay. But if I only had a few animals, that wouldn't have happened. But it did happen because I probably am similar boat to you. I'm probably 1 to 3 animals more than where I should be. Because I'll be completely honest, I do have favorites. and
Oh,
a few
100%.
animals do
You'd
get
lie if you said you
prioritized a little
didn't.
bit. Yeah, so I spend a lot more time with certain animals than I do. So, for example, Mango is my favorite. There's no point. Like, Mango is my favorite. When I feed her, I could, even when I'm busy, I could just chuck some roaches in there, or chuck locusts in there, or I could just cut up some chick and chuck that in there. But I always get her out just because I enjoy it, and that's the whole point. And then another animal will suffer, so they just get the food thrown in because I've spent the time with Mango. So it does get hard when you get really busy, especially if you've had a long day at work.
Yeah.
Or the wife needs something, the kids need something, the car's gone wrong. I don't know, you've got to go to a party like last night. Like, I couldn't do any reptile maintenance. So life gets in the way. So it's important to be self-aware and be like, I need to know my limits. And yeah,
I think that's the key. As long as you're aware of it and you're self-aware that at some point, because you see lots of people who clearly haven't got the time, unfortunately. And I would say this is about maximum. If I get, well, I've got some new arrivals hopefully in the next couple of weeks, which I think will probably add quite a bit of extra time on things. But otherwise, most of it now I've got to a point where I find as well, if you get a routine, so roughly know when you're changing stuff. And actually, what I was doing before was I was very sporadic. So I'd turn up and be like, oh, I need to change all the water today, or I'll feed everyone today, or I need to do this today. And actually often just wasting time when you just need to get on and do stuff, especially if it's the like changing of water, the slightly more tedious stuff. And then it gives you time to sort of get them out and do the more fun stuff.
Yeah, this is it. You almost becomes more of a chore, doesn't it? And you can't handle or interact. Or I find nowadays I don't have any time just to sit in my reptile room. Like, I find that I'm always doing something in my reptile room, which isn't a bad thing, but I never really have 10 minutes just to sit in there and just sort of watch the animals, which is kind of annoying because that's the whole point that you keep them, you know? So it's, I don't know what's being said. Let me read it, but I want to have a thing where the perspective, I don't think I've read enough, Gary, I think he's saying about breeding, but I want to have a thing where the prospect keeper needs to have a proper enclosure set up beforehand. Yeah, it's one of those things. What's your opinion on impulse purchases?
I hate it.
Yeah.
Generally, I've done it a couple of times and regretted it. Well, not regretted it, that's not right, but I'd come to realise that was not one of my brightest ideas. And it's very easy to sit here and go, I'll have one of those, I'll have two of those, I'll have two of those, and walk into, I mean, like, I could walk into a shop and you just like end up buying stuff for the, think, oh, I've got an empty viv there, I could move that, I could put that in there. But generally, I think from the other end of it, when I've been pretty lucky, to be fair, most of my animals that I've moved that have gone to new homes, generally the people that look after them, I would say there's only possibly maybe one that I found out about where I've been a bit like quite as good as you could, but generally most of them spend the time, the money, and actually half the time people are waiting weeks anyway for them, and by which point they've got their setup sorted. I've seen it. They've told me what they do, and they ask. And I hate this concept of people who get pissed off with people asking questions. Like, I would far rather someone ask me questions than just to take it and then just have no idea what they're doing. And I have people that even now, I've got people that probably have no intention of ever having had an animal from me, but I'm more than happy to answer a question. Like, as long as it doesn't take me hours and hours. His concept of people just not liking people who ask questions or thinking that you ask stupid questions. There's no real stupid question. Well, I mean, there is, but
it's a hard one, like, because I don't know what your opinion is. I'll ask the question, but so obviously I'm selling the baby Kims at the moment just to raise some capital. I fucking hate it when they message me and they go, "What's the lowest price you'd take?" If someone's going to message me and then turns out you're a 5-star amazing home, you've got an incredible enclosure set up, and then at the end of all that conversation you go,
"Don't come out with that first."
Yeah, do you want to knock 50 quid off? I'll go, yeah, of course, mate. Well, it's just going to a great home, like, have it for £100 less.
The greatest message I ever got was a guy who offered me, he said, "Oh, I've noticed you're selling them. I'll offer you £300 for it and it'll go to a good home." That was all he said. And I was like, some people have got no shame. Absolutely no shame.
It is ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of like asking for animals cheaper, but I don't go, "Oh, hey, what's the cheapest you'll take, or what's your best price? Oh,
You never open with like the best price. You just open, ask a bit about it just to make sure you're aware. And realistically, most of the time, if you're going for an animal, if you're biting over 50 quid or whatever, or 100 quid, and you're not going to go for it, then you're probably not going to go for it anyway.
You don't
like
want
most
it,
of the time, you should be happy to pay what they're asking to a certain extent, because no one's going to knock 50% off the asking price, are they?
No, it's how are you finding, because you bred obviously Fijis, and then have you bred anything else?
I haven't really bred much. So I bred Fijis, prasinus, technically pilbaras, but they never reached old enough to sell, so they sort of hatched, but they were dud.
Yeah.
They picked, and that was about it really. But I think the female was just too small. I've never seen such small legs. They were just terrible. But other than that, chihuahuas. And I've had some eggs from my lychees that I missed rather stupidly. 6 lots of fertile eggs last year that I found about 3 weeks ago, all of which were dried out, which was not one of my brightest ideas.
So how are you finding being a breeder in the sense of actually producing animals to be sold to random strangers? Like, how are you finding that?
It's helped me get to where I am now. Do I like it? Not really, because I find often it's a bit of a headache. Like, you just sit there and you get multiple people messaging you, and actually it's not really why I keep reptiles. I keep reptiles because I enjoy keeping them, not because I want to talk to someone about knocking 50 quid off a prasinus or whatever. And you get some interesting characters, shall I say.
It's hard when you have to say to someone no. It's very, because it's hard to articulate a polite no, and especially when someone's like in their head, they're like, I've messaged a breeder, I'm going to buy their animal, and then like it's completely different because it's like selling bloody apples and oranges. I sell Ackies, you sell prasinus, but like Ackies, they're like 100 quid, so anyone can really get them. So I really have to, same as yourself, obviously, because you do get a lot.
So you probably get it worse, to be fair.
I reckon I probably get more people that are serious idiots politely, and then you probably get a lot of daydreaming idiots politely in comparison. So we probably just get as much of the shit, but I probably get a lot of people that actually want to buy that are going to keep like trash, whereas the percentage of people
you've got to weed them out.
So trying to actually say to someone, I'm really sorry, you're not going to be able to buy my animal, it's enough to make me never want to breed animals ever again, just because I feel so bad. But then I'm like, I don't.
It is horrible.
Yeah, it's like I had a guy message me once, and he had a what was it? I think it was a 30-30-45 Exoterra or 45-45-60 Exoterra. I can't remember. And he was like, "I was this okay for the baby Aki?" I was like, "I'd recommend a 4x2x2. You'd get away with a 4x1x1, but you'd need to upgrade in like 4 months. So you might as well just get a 4x2x2. He's like, "Oh, I don't have space for a 4x2x2. I was like, "You ever going to have space for a 4x2x2? And he was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, that's like a minimum for one Aki, and I'd recommend bigger." And he was like, "Oh, well, if I might be, how long does it take to get fully grown?" I was like, "I don't know, 18 months, 2 years." So he was like, "Oh, I might move by then." I'm like, "I'm not going to sell you an animal that I know that you can't house." And he's just like, it's just stuff. And I get to the point where I don't reply to people. It's just so awkward.
I had a couple of people who, and I feel really bad because some people message you and they give you like this whole thing about it's their lifelong dream and they've always wanted a tree monitor, and you think, okay, fine. And then they start sort of saying stuff that rings alarm bells. So like, obviously everyone's got to start somewhere. There's no
of course.
that. Like not everyone is going to know exactly what the basking temperature are or what size viv and all that sort of stuff. But the classic one is where people start off with the worst is this big enough? If those three, is this big enough, is always a worry, because it normally means no. And I've had quite a few people who've wanted to keep adult prasinus in, I think 2 foot by 3 foot by 2 foot. I had someone who wanted to keep it in the smaller exoterras, and I don't know. It's difficult to say no to these people because you can tell that they've wanted it for ages, and I'm sure they might very well have the money. But then if you don't have the space,
It's pointless.
And I don't think I could ever sell an animal to someone who I thought that was never going to look after it. I'd rather give it away.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard. It's so hard because that's why I'm not hatching all 26 Akis, because I know that I won't be able to sell 26 Akis.
No, not to good homes anyway.
No, I could sell 26 Akis for sure, but I don't want to get to the point where I have to like take morality out of the equation. So Eddie is saying, why are monitor people so stuck up in that sense? It's crazy, man. Why not build a community instead of enlist a mindset? It's so hard. So I basically, long story short, for me, when I started keeping monitors, a lot of people were like, you can't keep monitors, you can't do this, that's too hard, they're too this, they're too this. And they're not wrong, but they were very much like, we're the best, you're the worst. So I didn't keep monitors for ages, went for a load of different reptiles, and then I ended up keeping monitors because that's what I wanted to keep. And now I'm a someone, because I have a certain amount of followers after my name. A lot of people do want to be like, yeah, man, you're great. And I'm like, but I remember you like 4 years ago when you didn't want to even talk to me. So fuck off. But I think a lot of people just have egos. So there's not really a lot to say on it because I'm trying my best not to perpetuate hate and push. I'm happy to bitch and moan, but I don't think it gets anywhere. I do think it needs to be spoken about, but I think just being like, oh yeah, man, it sucked. I don't think that's the right way. I think just being like showing love, showing how it should be done, showing community. So outsiders looking in can see the two sides and then pick the lesser of the two evils is my opinion on that.
I don't think it's just the monitor community though. I think the whole reptile community is a bit like that. I think everyone gone with it before social media and everything like that, where everyone used to keep themselves to themselves and would do their own thing. And I think now social media, if you're not going by the norm, if you're not doing things as people say, then it can bite you in the backside.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we've got a couple of questions. Sorry for the peach rate questions. That's fine. I eventually will be doing a peach rate video, and I've got a whole segment dedicated to my peach rate in my new video that I filmed today. Dog food. I do feed mine dog food on a red bulb. Michael's in chat. Don't get him started on reptiles and dog food. I've seen a couple of the comments. I know you can't get locusts. Mine likes cockroaches. I put cockroaches in a bowl, so obviously they can't get out. Oh god, my Mac is dead. I need to find my charger. How unprofessional of me. But yeah, I put mine in a. I put cockroaches in a bowl. Mine seems to like cockroaches. For the most part, mine only really is strictly locust cockroaches. Now and then gets shrimp and fish. And then Gary is saying, I got my Aki by proving that I could have a great home, properly care for him, had it set up, ready to go, breeder. Exactly. So if you can say to people, start with, this is what I've got, this is what I've done, this is my experiences, this is what I'm willing to do. Like I've had a couple of people I've even given Akis to, just because I can see they're so passionate and have great home. And this isn't me being like, I wish I didn't now because I need the money, but like at the time they were like 80 quid, I think. And I was just like, it's 80 quid. Like they've spent so much money on the setup. I know my Aki's going to a good home. I probably wouldn't do that with Tree Monitor. I'd be like, okay, full price. But it's a lot easier when I'm like, again, selling an animal that's, let's be honest, throwaway price, which is sad, but it's the reality of the situation. Can you recommend reptile enclosure brands? If you're not in the UK, no. But Reptilife, South Downs Aquatics, what brand? Matt's home brand, because all of the ones to his left are custom built.
These are all hand built. So Bailey did this one. Then the one, I think they're Vivtex actually, the plastic ones that you can just about see there. Vivtech are no longer going, but I think Ridgeways are doing PVC. They're pretty good. I think the problem with PVC is they are very good, and I really like them, but a lot of people are limited by the cost. And actually PVC Vivs are, yes, they last a lot longer, but they are considerably more expensive. A lot of it depends on what animal you're thinking of getting. I think if you're getting anything that requires a bigger Viv than, say, 5 foot, 6 foot, then I would just build it.
I agree. I'm going to be building all of mine.
You're probably better off. Whereas if you're getting a smaller one, anything that like exoterras are generally pretty fine for most stuff that's small.
Yeah.
But once it starts getting a reasonable size, build it, or it's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I go on Facebook Marketplace, find secondhand like wood or
Yeah.
doors or windows, and just build it as cheap as you can, as nice as you can. Fucking dog food.
And never buy a Viv brand new. Like, you can pretty much, if you're not impulse buying something, you've got time, you can find most stuff significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
So like this Exo, I mean, that's the largest Exo Terra. They're normally like what, 300 quid, 350
Yeah,
quid.
just shy of
brand new.
400 quid, I think now.
Like, it was like, I think that cost me, was it 80 quid, something like that, secondhand, and it is literally like new. So I would never buy a brand new one.
Yeah, just keep your eyes peeled on Facebook, and if you know eventually you're going to get something, like you say, it doesn't matter if the Exo Terra sits there for 6 months. You know, so you're better off than, like, because I just got the one down from the biggest, and I paid 60 for mine. It's not in the best of condition. It needed a good clean, and 100%. Like, just for raising up babies, 60 quid, but it's just shy of 300 brand new. But yeah, so I don't know where I'm at with things. Peach rope video. Yeah, it's not, there's like a 5-minute segment in I filmed a full reptile room tour today. And I had Toad out. So Toad is out in the new video. And then Michael's saying, keep your circles small. I think if you just show people like how you want to do things, regardless of what you're doing, if you just show how you're doing it, and then hopefully the outsiders looking in can go, well, he's doing it differently, and then get curious to themselves rather than just spread hate. That's at least my opinion.
And I think it's always good to have good friends who, if you start saying something, they go, no, that's stupid, you're being a twat. Like, that's the key. You need someone who can say you're being a twat.
100%.
And doesn't just echo chamber everything you say.
Oh yeah, no, like we keep it real with each other, which I appreciate. Loads of background checks. I think any good breeder will grill you, and if a breeder's not grilling you and it's just like, yep. Again, it depends on the species, because if you're buying, for example, a leopard gecko, someone should ask like basic questions: have you got a setup? Have you got this? But I can understand you'd assume. But when you're getting into like more advanced stuff, you'd expect people to know how to care for it. Deep dive question to Matt. In your opinion, what's the most difficult aspect of keeping tree monitors for you? And if you could give them no limit setup, what would that look like?
So I think there's two bits. So first of all, I don't think people realize how much time is involved. So you can automate everything. You can put sprayers on, but actually, even from a pair of prasinus, if you've got them, or if you want to breed them, you need to be observing them, observing their behaviors. You need to be just checking on them regularly. And actually, I think time is the biggest issue, which a lot of people don't quite realize. You can't just sort of stick them together and leave them to it. And I mean, I've got one at the moment that's in the back there that's proving to be a massive headache, which I've probably spent at least an hour a day with that animal, whether it's bathing it, whether it's getting it out, checking its shed, or whether it's checking its sores. And that was just because someone unfortunately kept it and became afraid of it, and then didn't get it out and didn't look at it, and then it ended up as it is. And then the other thing, I think the difficult part is people tend to keep them too fat. So I think keeping a tree monitor slim is incredibly difficult. Now, females are generally a bit easier, because actually often when they lay a clutch, they shed a lot of weight, whether that's a good thing or bad thing. But I would say a large proportion of the tree monitors in the UK, and I'll hold my hands up, a couple of my females got a bit on the plump side, and it is difficult to shed their weight. But I would say a lot of them are overweight. And I think that's why people tend to struggle with breeding them, is because if you've got too fat a female, she just probably won't cycle. And if you've got too fat a male, he's never interested. So actually keeping them pretty nice and slim and skinny is, I think, probably the most important thing. And then the second part, if I had no limit, so I would love to be able to keep them outside, but that is never going to be an option here in the UK. Obviously, we can put them briefly outside in the summer, but that's not possible here. From a size point of view, I think bigger is always better, but obviously there is a certain size where it just becomes ridiculous and you cannot monitor your animal. I quite like 10-foot cubes. So there's a Crocodiles of the World, it's not that far from me, just up the road. They've got theirs in sort of about a 10-foot cube, I would say. And it's got pretty much everything. It's got like a waterfall, and that is enough, really. I mean, you could go even bigger if you wanted to, but I think that would be my ideal. Whenever I go there, I always look and think, wow, am I really doing as good as I can for them? So these Vivs here are So the prasinus are I think it's 6 foot long, 2.5 foot deep by just over 5 foot high. It's a reasonable size, and by some standards, that's way bigger than most people. But I'm not sure that's still big enough, and I think if I move, I will go bigger again. I think in an ideal world, I think 3 foot deep is probably the best, I would say, or not the best, that's not the right word, probably the minimum.
Yeah.
I think I wouldn't go 2 foot deep. I think if you can go 2.5, even 3 foot, I think that makes all the difference. And then if I could, I think length is probably underdone. So if you could go even longer than 6 foot, so even 8 foot, and then go up to 6 foot high, I think that would be ideal. Because every time I look, I think, well, should I be keeping them? Should I be keeping them in a bit bigger setup? Should I just sell everything and keep one pair of tree monos or walk-in setup? But
I don't disagree.
Difficult.
I think old Father Blue says it's a beautiful answer, so he obviously agrees. I think the problem is I really, 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 really struggle, as Michael's joking here, but it's not a joke, it's serious. So I contemplate selling half my collection all the time, but not because I don't want them, because I really struggle with space. So I really want to give everyone massive walk-ins, but I know I can't because we haven't got the space. And like you said, you keep them, you get them, you have them, and then after keeping them in, you sort of get to the point where you've got your collection, and then you go, I wish I had them in bigger, but now I have too many animals, or I don't have the space. Like, I don't have the space to upgrade significantly outside of my plans. But realistically, how big is too big? Because you put them, let's just say you put them in a 6x6x3, a huge enclosure for many standards. I guarantee you, most of us that are conscious with our keeping will go, it's still too small. So then you put them in a 8x8x3, and then you go, oh, that is an amazing enclosure. But then you see them use every inch, and you go, I could probably go bigger. And then you do a 10 cube, and then you see, and then it never stops. And my brain is like, eventually you're just back at the wild. So obviously you have to draw a line. I'm not saying, oh, just keep them in anything. Like I'm doing an 8 long, 7 tall, and it will be 2.5 foot deep. I'm going to try and make it 2.5 foot deep, but I don't have the space for 3 foot deep where I'm putting it.
2.5 is the minimum. I think 2.5 is fine.
I was going to go 2, but I've said to you before this, I'm going to try and make it 2.5 because like you say, that is so key. But I'm going to do 8 foot long, 7 foot tall, 2.5 foot deep.
Yeah, that's massive.
For a pair of prasinus. It will be split in half and have a pair and a pair for a period of time. Maybe not. But eventually it'll be one big viv for one pair. And then the divider will stay for when the female's laying. I can just put the divider back in. And I'm excited about that. I'm like, okay, that's going to be a nice big viv, and I'm going to put one side of it semi-open so I can actually get into it and sit in there with them. But then I know that my brain's going to go, it's not big enough. So it's just like, is it even worth the mental
There's a guy on Facebook, I forget what his name is now, but he's got like an 8 foot by 7 foot by 3 foot, I think, in his garage. And every time I look,
Stingray guy.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, and every time I look at it, I think, oh, I should do that.
Yeah,
I should do that. And actually, I think at the end of the day, I think if you can provide reasonable setups, in my head, that's okay, as long as they are not. I think if you start thinking, oh, what's the bare minimum I could keep that in, because then I can get something else. Then that's a dangerous game, because I could quite easily put everything in, I don't know, 4x4x2s and put pairs in there, and they would probably breed. They would probably be okay. Are they thriving? No. Am I giving them the best they can? No, not really. And then I would feel guilty. And then you go down that whole vicious cycle of, oh, wow, should I sell everything?
Yeah. It's like I could do mangroves in 6x3x3s and still have space for more animals. But I'm planning on doing like a 10x4x4. So it's different levels. But it's just one of those things. You can't, to be a breeder, this is a hot topic now. I hate the fact that breeders cut space to produce animals, and I'm doing it. And I'm doing it because I would love, for example, I don't need to breed mangroves. I could just have a pair in a massive walk-in, have the space to do so. But I am going to keep all of mine, and they're going to be in slightly smaller enclosures. Well, I'm trying to justify it. They're going to be in smaller enclosures than I want them to be in because I'm sacrificing the space to have the animals. And my brain's like, is that right? Like, is that right? Is it right? And for the greater good of the species, if I can produce captive bred mangroves and they are wanted and do fill a need, probably. But does it make it okay? See what I mean? It's such a hard topic. It's so
you just think now, I look and I sometimes think, well, if I put them all in 4x2x4s, I could probably have, I don't know how many pairs of tree monitors there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think you'd be lying if there's anyone that says it's never about the money. I don't think there's a single person in this world that can say that it's 100% not about the money. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to lie. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have any of this stuff if I hadn't bred them. And it was a bit like our Maruki project. I'd be lying if I said in the back of my head I wasn't thinking, should I just put my other male in and they'll just be off like a tea and I'll have another emptying clutches or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
But I've got what I want now. It's allowed me to get what I want. I'm pretty much done now. I can't get any more. I've got no way of being able to house anymore. So I'm now done. So actually, if they never breed again, I don't care, to be honest. It would be nice to get Maruki babies, don't get me wrong, but I'm not that fussed about it. But I think it's very easy once it starts. I can see how if you look at all of the top breeders or whatever, they all start out at hobbyists, and I can see how easy it is to go down that slope of you start to breed something that's a bit more niche and you start to make a bit of money, and you think, well, actually, if I get this and I breed this, then I can make a bit more money. And if I squeeze this into this enclosure, I can make a bit, and then then you end up with 1,000 snakes in racks and you're churning royals out left, right, and centre.
You're making loads of money though, so who cares, baby?
And charging people for your advice.
There you go. So, but the logic I've heard on this topic as well, the same argument. If they produce in smaller cages, then why change it? How does it make it? Thing is, like, if an animal breeds in a smaller enclosure, that means you can meet the correct environmental stimulus to achieve a reproductive cycle, right? So that's all that means. Does that mean that your parameters are correct? Yes, it does. Does it mean that you're meeting all the animals' mental fortitudes? I don't know. But for me personally, if you can achieve it in smaller and you're only doing it and you can't achieve it in bigger, it's because you can't dial in the care in bigger enclosures. So you can only dial in the enclosures to smaller enclosures. And that's facts. Because obviously if it's not, for example, I put Mango in a bigger enclosure when I moved. If she didn't lay eggs, that doesn't mean she's less happy. It just means that I can't meet the environmental stimulus in the bigger enclosure. And that's a reflection as me as a keeper, not her as an animal, because she was in a smaller enclosure before I moved. She was laying eggs. She's now in a bigger enclosure. She is still laying eggs. So that means my environmental parameters are still good.
Yeah.
So she has more space now by quite a bit. And I'm upgrading her again in phase 3. But she uses all of the space. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I kept you in smaller. Now, if I put her in this bigger enclosure and she didn't lay eggs, I guarantee you my first thought would have been, well, she was happier in the smaller enclosure. But I genuinely think it's because the smaller enclosure is easier to meet the environmental needs. And that's why she was laying eggs regularly. And thankfully, like touch wood, she still is. So,
yeah, at the end of the day, I think most of it does boil down to, as much as this might be a bit controversial, but it boils down to profits. And if you can keep something in a smaller tank and do what you can in a smaller tank than you can in a larger tank, then you can maximize how much you gain. And do I agree with that? No. But if that's your business, at the end of the day, it's a business. So your business is to make money. And if you can maximize profits doing it differently, then you're going to do that.
It's hard because I think if a lot of people were transparent and they were like, I keep in this to make money, then I think people would get, like, for example, if I did mangroves in smaller enclosures and said, I'm only doing this because it's better for my financial gain, a lot of people would be like, what a fucking dickhead. But then at the same time, you can't say anything else other than, like, obviously I'm greedy or whatever, because I'm just being honest. I think it's when people have a false perception. But on this point, Eddie, it's the biggest pet peeve of his. For me, like I said earlier, I think just show how you do it. For example, I'll stick with me and mangroves. I show how I do it. with like a lot of lighting and bigger enclosures, this, that, and the other. And people coming to me then hopefully will go, oh, I like how this guy's doing it. And then I can show that way rather than going to people that I know keep in smaller enclosures and go, oh, by the way, that's too small. That for me doesn't get me anywhere. Showing people how I do it and trying to push the good that I do, for me, is how I will push my hobby forward rather than any other way. That's just how I like to do it. So
my biggest pet peeve is people who preach it one way and keep them the other. And they'll preach that you need X, Y, Z, this size enclosure, but actually don't do that themselves, or you need this and don't do that themselves. I think if you're going to preach it, you need to be doing what you preach, or just being honest and saying, this is why I can't do it because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah, so if you're like, I started keeping them, I ran out of space, realized that they need more. If I could do it again, I wish I'd go bigger. Please take my advice on this and go bigger, for example.
Yeah.
But when you
about being open.
Yeah, but then if you're buying loads more animals, you're like, oh, I haven't got space, and then you buy another 4 mangroves, Paul, then you can't, well, it was 5, but Paul, you can't say, oh, don't keep more animals when you're buying 5 mangroves just like that. And speaking of, when am I going to get a boyfriend for a mango? I'm trying. It's an open investigation. I've got a couple of leads, but they keep leading me to the same brick wall. I have a pair, 99% sure that it's a pair. So I have obviously 6. A mango is obviously a female. I have a pair, which I'm sure is a pair of young animals, which should breed for me end of next year. Should be old enough to breed for me end of next year. Year after, maybe for the female, but the male will be old enough to breed mango end of next year. Hopefully, being well, I can get a boyfriend for mango on loan or buy it, but probably not. So a couple of years, but I'm not in a rush. I'd love it to be tomorrow, but it'll happen when it happens. I forgot what I said. Probably something about not having enough space. But yeah, never going to get Mango a rug. Mango does need a rug. You didn't see the rug, Matt. Croc Doc was talking about the rug for his lace monitors, and they bred constantly on the rug.
Oh yeah, I've seen the video.
Yeah. His talk at AHH was just dedicated about his monitor lizard sex rug. So yeah, that was about that. I'm sending Paulie one tonight. I don't like that you call me Paulie, Gary. I can't lie, because only my mum and Fee called me Paulie. But it's weird. Anyway, we're running to the hour and a half. We'll talk all night, so we'll touch briefly on. I don't know if you're on a deadline. You on a deadline? Do you want to get out?
No, I'm good.
All right, cool.
Kids are in bed.
Perfect. Talk about lizards it is then. Anyone else got any questions for myself or Matt? Drop them in. But let's talk about. Hang on, we need to wait because we're no longer talking about tree monitors. Let's talk about Mitchellii. So obviously you've not had them. Yeah, we want Paul to get Mitchellii. You've not had them all that long.
No.
So you can't say obviously loads and loads because they're incredibly new to the hobby. But Mitchellii, how are you finding Mitchellii?
I really like them, I'll be honest. So I've always wanted a water monitor, so something like a Mertens, but they're obviously one. I mean, in the UK now, I don't think there's very few about, certainly that you can get your hands on. And also the size of them limits me significantly. But the fact that they're sort of almost semi-aquatic in the point where I can get like a nice big pool for them and they reach a reasonable size. And actually I think the problem was I originally got put off with them when the original animals were in the market. They were hideously obese. They were overweight, drab. They didn't look very nice, and I was like, "Wow, actually, is that really what I want?" And I was like, I didn't go for them because I was contemplating getting them at the time.
Yeah,
but actually, the animals the babies now are just completely different kettle of fish, compared to what the original parents were like. The like markings, it's really difficult. I've tried to see if I can get pictures of them, but it's really difficult to get their colours. They've got these sort of almost like rusty brown.
Yeah, it's hard. I find out with the mangroves, the camera never shows what they actually look like.
No. And fingers crossed it's a pair. They're looking like a pair.
Yeah, you definitely have.
Never say.
So you have, obviously, I don't know how well everyone can see, but this one here obviously has the shortest, stubbier nose, and this one here has the pointed nose. well, I don't know if you can see my mouse. You probably can't. So this one at the bottom has obviously the pointed nose, elongated, bigger pupil, and then this one has the more evil-looking, rounded nose. That almost looks like a water painting a little bit. The effect on that.
Yeah, it was bizarre. It was taken. I think I find them quite interesting. They often I mean, they can't do it now because I've moved it all around. But they used to just bask in natural sunlight all the time. So before the lights would come on, they'd be out sort of basking. Obviously, they can't get the UVB because of the windows, but
yeah, you can even see there when you, that you even say about the head shape. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you've got a pair there, mate. They're like little velociraptors, aren't they?
But yeah, their tails are the tails are incredibly long compared to the rest of their body.
Oh, that's exciting. Just like Kimberly's.
But obviously, Paul's going to get some next week.
If I win the lottery that I don't if I win the lottery that I don't enter, I would buy all of them. They're like there's only one of two semi-aquatic Odacea. So for me, as a guy that obviously loves lizards that live in water, it's a dream come true. But
and they're a good size as well. They're slightly bigger than Aki's, sort of Tristis size.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah, they're what's up, Scales? I don't know if I've seen you in chat before, so appreciate you stopping in. But yeah, I really like them. Again, the whole money conversation, I just can't afford them, like most people in the country. And like you say, you've been fortunate to have success with animals, and they've allowed you to get sort of what you want to get. So sort of all fallen in your lap at sort of perfect time, really.
The prices for them, they will have to fall if more become available. It's not. Whereas tree monitors, obviously, they're having clutches of 4 or 5. My understanding is you can have clutches of 20 plus of Mitchellii. So if they're churning, if that's happening, I mean, it all depends. None of them may breed, and that may be it. This may be the only ones we ever have. I can't see any more coming in anytime soon. I think there's a few knocking about in Europe, is my understanding, but that's about it, really. As far as I'm aware, there's none in America.
No, I don't think there is. I think they were smuggled from a zoo. I think the original origin story is just something stupid. Like, obviously, we'll never know. And they're only a CITES Appendix 2. So now that they're here and they're completely legal.
The majority of them, I think, got caught. I think then, I suspect the parents, I suspect at some point, I don't know. It's difficult to know where anything came from these days, especially if it's come from Europe. But as long as you've got, as you say, they're CITES 2, and they've come over.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it, basically.
Same as Lacey's. Apparently, there was never ever any quota to export lace monitors. So the lace monitors shouldn't be in captivity, but they are. So I call you Paulie because I had a ton of friends named Paul as a kid, and they were all dipshits. So I fit the bill then, except the one that went by Paul. Oh, okay. Except the one that. Yeah. I mean, you can call me Paulie if you like, Gary. I don't mind. But Fee has now started calling me Paul, which I hate because it's too formal and proper, and she's my girlfriend. Like Paulie, or her nickname for me is Bug. I quite like Bug. It makes me feel like I'm like, oh yeah, Bug, yeah. So I like Bug, but she's gone from calling me Paulie or Bug to Paul, and I'm like, this is all fucking Gary's fault because he calls me Paulie. So yeah, you have to ignore me. I did have a nap today, Gary, but I'm still a bit grumpy. And yes, the Mitchellii are incredibly cool. They are arguably the rarest monitor in UK, arguably, outside of the ones that shouldn't be here, in the sense of the ones that are hush hush secret. I
was going to say, I know a few of those.
Yeah, I know a couple of those. I've actually mentioned one on here before. That apparently I'm not allowed to mention, but he's posted about them on Facebook. So I'm like, I won't mention it again because I don't want to be a dickhead. But there's a guy that has some monitors that should not be in captivity. And I knew they shouldn't be in captivity, but he's posted pictures of them publicly and they're still there on his Facebook. So I just assumed it would okay to be speaking about it. And someone actually messaged me like, he doesn't like it when people talk about it. I was like, why the fuck's he posting it on Facebook then?
Well, it's a bit like that. Do you remember that shop? Was it 2 years ago that posted a picture selling a Nile monitor, that clearly wasn't a Nile monitor. That
Yeah,
looked
yeah,
like
yeah.
was it a
It
Bengalese?
was
I
a
can't remember what
Bengal.
it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that suddenly just disappeared because everyone wanted to buy it. And then when I remember messaging them, and they said something along the lines of, it's going to become a shop pet.
Yeah.
Okay. I said, can I come and see it? No.
Been sold underhand for sure.
Because obviously, you can't, because they're CITES 1, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, Bengalensis
Obviously, you
is one.
can't sell them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they've gone somewhere. I know that I think there was one other. I think there was one other one that was knocking about, as far as I'm aware.
I think a pair came up for sale in America. They were either Bengals or Cloudeds. Apparently with CITES.
That's mad.
Apparently they were like 10 grand or something silly like that. Hello, Jack. I don't know if I've seen you in chat before, so thank you for stopping in. I appreciate you. I call my wife Scooter. Then we got a sulcata tortoise, and the kid's name is Scoot. She low-key hates the tortoise but won't say it. So there you go. But yeah, so on the subject of Michelai, what are you sort of planning? Are you just sort of waiting to see how big they actually get? Because obviously there isn't a lot known about them, or have you got in your head a rough idea of how you're going to keep them? Or
so at the minute, the plan is that they'll go in this. Well, the new editions that are coming in the next couple of weeks are going to go in there to begin with in this bottom tank, which is about 4 foot high, 4 foot long, 3 foot deep. So the plan is that they will go in there hopefully. Now, a lot of it will depend on how big they get. If they get bigger than I anticipate, then I might, because there's another plan to get bigger vids here. But I think hopefully 4 foot by 4 foot by 3 foot should be big enough, and that will give me enough room to put in a nice big pond filter and go the full works. And then hopefully, because I've got I just use like a little 3 litre rub that's in their tank at the moment. But I mean, you put it in, and I'll come back in 5 minutes, and it'll just be covered in mud, and it's like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
So trying to decide how I'm going to do that so that the filter doesn't get clogged. I'm not sure yet, but I think I might just put it up a bit higher so that hopefully by the time they get up there to get in the water, most of the mud and whatever else will be off of them. But that will be fun to look forward to. And then, hopefully go from there.
That sounds like a good size. It's bigger than probably than what I would give. I'd probably go 6 by 3.
I think the floor space is the only thing I'm a bit nervous about.
Yeah, but I think
only 4 foot by 3 foot.
I think that'd be fine because I would have gone 6 by 3, but probably by 2. So that's only a 12. So you're 4 by 3, which is still 12. 4, 8, 12. Yeah, so it's the same size what I would probably go for them, but you're going obviously a foot taller plus you're 3 foot deep. So that's overall, and you could maybe
it should be all right. Yeah,
do some sort of like mock rock or just climbable walls with some platforms. We give them plenty of space. I have to come over and see them at some point because
definitely.
My problem is that when I see them, I am going to come home to Fee and I'm going to be like, we need to get them. Like, I don't know, we're going to have to start like, I don't know, selling pictures of my feet to get money to like get these Michelai. We've got to do something. Just because I know firsthand when I try and send you boys pictures of the mangroves and their colors, and it's like, this does not show how cool they are. And then you come over in person. So I know when I see them, I'm going to be like, oh my God. Oh, wow, we've got loads of people like that I don't know. This is nice. I didn't come on before, but I love your videos. Been planning on buying a green tree monitor for a while. You make amazing content. I appreciate you, Jack. If you're in the UK, this is the guy. He's the breeder. He's the breeder of kaida. Skinks and Scorpions. He's here for once. I don't think I've seen you, so appreciate you stopping in. We're back up to 17 people. I don't know how many likes this video's got right now, but we've been talking about monitor lizards for an hour and 45 minutes. Where do you get this? Drop a like and a comment on the video, everyone. I appreciate you stopping in. So let's talk breeding prasinus, because you've been breeding prasinus now just over a year, bit over a year.
When was it? Well, technically the first babies that hatched was January of last year. The first lock and eggs were, I think, in July of the year before. So it will be 2 years technically this July.
Jesus Christ.
I know. Time flies.
That's mad. 2 years. Wowzers. That is mad. That's crazy. Okay.
I realised my prasinus, my females will be, are they 5 this year or 4? I think there'll be 5 this year.
Fucking hell. We've been friends for too long. We're aging. Jesus Christ. So Eddie's got so many questions. So on this, Eddie, so this is an interesting one. I will post this because I was going to message Eddie about this. And I just wanted to like reiterate it in my head. So I season my mangrove, obviously, to cycle her. Now, what Eddie's doing at the moment, I don't know if you've seen it, Matt, but what he's doing, he's dropped, just as a test, and if I'm wrong, Eddie, I'm sorry, but he's dropped the halogens out the enclosures and swapped them for LEDs. So you will get a little bit of an intensity there because obviously it's energy. So you're getting a bit of a basking spot, but obviously it's going to drop the ambience. He's posted a video today about the ambience have dropped about 10 degrees. But obviously that's in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. And he's doing this to drop the temps before introduction for a cycle, and then he's spraying more. So obviously he's upping humidity, but dropping temps. Now, for me personally, I don't get them humid with the mangroves. Obviously, I know they're different species, but they come from similar places. So I personally don't drop temps when I'm spraying because I don't like cold and wet, because in my head, I'm like, I'm going to get a respiratory infection. But admittedly, his enclosures aren't cold. I forget what they are, but I think they're like mid 70s rather than like mid 80s ambience. So I was just curious, like, when you do you just let yours drop with natural weather in the UK? Do you deliberately try and drop? Do you run a constant temperature but spray more? Like, what do you sort of do?
So when I had them, so they've moved. When did they move? Was it July of last year? So I originally had them in the other room. And I would say I generally kept the ambient higher. So I know a lot of people are quite happy to just let the ambient drop. In that room where they were, if I let the ambient drop, it would go, I think it dropped down to about, at the worst, it was like 13, 14 degrees. And I did have an issue where one of them, when the male was separated, the thermostat broke and it dropped down to 14 and he ended up with a respiratory tract infection. But generally I used to keep the ambient overnight at about 25 on just like albeit a very dangerous ceramic heater at the bottom of the Viv, but I've now got tube heaters. Since they've been here, I've let it drop a bit lower, partly because of the energy and everything going through the roof, but I've sort of let it drop down to around 21. And they last laid a clutch, when would it have been? Just before Christmas, which unfortunately, I think partly because the female was moved, she scattered most of the eggs, so most of them were no good. But generally, it's weird. I don't do anything specifically. So food intake is always a big one. And my biggest issue I had was I would get a female to lay. She'd lay her eggs beautifully. And I would then give her, because obviously she'd lost a lot of calcium, I'd probably give her, say, I don't know, a day-old quail, but sort of soak it in calcium. So there's lots there. But the problem I used to find is giving that sort of bigger meal afterwards, it almost forced her straight into another cycle. And she never really recovered. And there was a point where actually she was looking a little bit worse for wear because she would pretty much go on and cycle again. So actually now I generally try to just sort of use roaches, mainly female roaches, and just feed a small amount, but then just gradually increase it and then hope that tends to lead to a longer cycle. Because actually now she's not cycled for 4 months. Now, at the minute, I'm trying to hammer them with food to see if she will cycle. And at the moment she hasn't. Whether that's because there's a new male in with her, if I haven't had any joy in the next sort of month or two, I might try moving the male out for a bit and then bringing him back in and just trying a few different bits and pieces. But I'll be honest with you, I got pretty lucky with breeding the prasinus originally because I didn't do anything. There was nothing that was game changing about it. I got the right temperatures, made sure they had correct nesting boxes, made sure the females were ready, made sure they were lean but not sort of skinny, if that makes sense, and made sure the male was in the same place, because actually my male at one point got a bit fat while he went off in his own tank, and I found that actually he was a bit lethargic, well not lethargic, but he didn't seem to do the job. But actually once he slimmed down he was fine.
Fat males don't breed.
No, unfortunately not.
No. So Eddie's just saying there's a storm. That's why there was a humidity bump. And then, so the barometric pressure, Eddie, I 100% get, but maybe I do it wrong because I've tried to reach out to people for this and I don't get any answers. So what I personally do is I have a wet season and a dry season. for my mangroves, well, all of my tree monitors as well. And I don't breed tree monitors. I haven't tried to breed tree monitors, so I can't comment on that. But I've successfully had eggs from mangroves, so clearly what I'm doing with them is working. What I do is in my wet season, I keep them. I make sure it's in our summer. So our summer is my wet season, because then there's it's warmer at night because I don't give it any nighttime heat, so it's warmer at night. So then I spray at night and in the day, so I get simulated rain. I don't get natural barometric pressure, but I simulate wet stuff because then that way it's humid and hot. But then in the winter, I have a cold season, and indicus types are known to need to go down to like 18 degrees or colder to be able to trigger that reproductive event. But I don't spray them because being at 18 degrees but wet and humid can cause issues. But then obviously we get a lot of rain in the winter, so you get natural barometric pressure anyway. So that's how I do that. And for me, it's nothing to do with food. Like it's just, but then similar to your prasinus, Mango, she cycles every 90 days. So it can't just be a reproductive event that only happens in a wet and dry season, because obviously it happens 4 times throughout the year. So obviously there has to be another stimulus outside of rain or humidity, you know. But I don't change her food. I don't feed her as much in the winter, but other than that, I don't change it. So it is interesting to know exactly sort of. If you've got questions, Father Blue, then let me know, and I'll ask Matt outright, sort of directly. My all-time favorite monitor, full stop ever, is probably a Parenti, and then that I keep is Mango. My advice for YouTube, I just keep posting. Like honestly, Instagram's good to gain traction. Just keep posting. Just stay true to you. Don't try and do stuff that other people. You have to play a game, so you have to post what people want to watch, but just do what you want to do, and then hopefully you'll build an organic audience. But what's your all-time favorite monitor, Mr. Matt?
It's got to be a Parenti, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it has to be a Parenti.
We can't really see it, but they're stunning, man. Parentis.
Back in the day of when Steve Irwin was chasing them, you can't beat a Parenti.
Yeah, or Glebal Palmer, which is basically just a dwarf Parenti, but yeah.
I don't think we'll ever get them, unfortunately.
I would sell everything. The only animal I'm breeding a fish. No idea what that is. Coideros. Super responsive barometric pressure, especially when they get big weather change. I think barometric pressure has a lot to do with cycling, because I know rain does trigger a lot of reproductive events. I just worry about getting them cold when it's wet at the same time. Parenti is the goat. Parenti is the goat. I prefer Parentis to Komodos for sure. Like for sure. But yeah, so if anyone's got any questions for Matt in the sense of how he breeds, okay, here we go. Matt, how do you feel about continually breeding females and allowing them to cycle/breed? In the wild, it's been documented that they cycle once a year. That's it. I'll let you answer this, but I'm just curious for this. If you want to comment, Eddie, how have they proven? Because if we don't know how they're nesting, how have they proven that they're only cycling once a year? Because I don't know, because I've never looked into it, but I'll leave you with the question.
So I'll be honest, I last year was starting to feel really guilty because no matter what I did, I could not stop them breeding. So I dropped the temperatures, I dropped the food, whatever it was. And all I found is if I dropped the food, they ended up in much worse shape when they cycled. Luckily, they've now stopped cycling because actually it was just getting stupid, to be honest. And the females weren't really recovering well. And I get some people just want them to cycle as much as possible. Well, actually, I'm at a point now where I don't need them to cycle. Other than obviously hopefully the Maruki, but at the time I just couldn't get them to stop, and it was probably every 2.5 months, 3 months, I would say. So what we're talking, it would be you'd see first lock, then they'd normally lay about 30 to 35 days after that, and then you're probably talking another 30 days until the next lock. Yeah, so probably 2.5 months or so. But I didn't want them to carry on breeding, but at the time I couldn't stop them. But luckily they now have stopped. And if they don't breed again, it's not the end of the world. Like I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah. I'd like an Aki. I can help you with Akis. Matt can help you with tree monitors. Obviously, Akis are a lot more affordable than tree monitors. They probably cost you about the same in the long run, I would have thought, in the sense of
I think
enclosures.
food-wise is less as
Yeah,
well, and enclosures is obviously
different sizes. So, but yeah, Akis are probably a bit more sociable if you're counting that than Akis. Why is a parenti everywhere? I mean, I'm not even going to answer this question. Just look at a parenti. Does not intelligence. Just look at a parenti. Question from Mr. Mikkel. What's your plan with your other tree monitors? Are you hoping to breed them as well?
So honestly, I'm not too fussed. So the Beckerai, and originally the plan was that I was going to get some unrelated blood and then hopefully breed them later down the line. I'm not too worried if they do or they don't breed. I would like to breed the McRae at some point, even just to get one clutch to say that I've done it.
Yeah.
But again, it's not the be all and end all now. I think I've done what I need to do. Hope as long as I can get to a point where actually they can be housed together, that's the key. Because at the moment, I'm looking like I might have 3 males, which is not
Royal
ideal.
Rumble, that is.
Yeah. Especially the size of one of the males. The male that I've currently got at the minute. I mean, I've not seen anything that size, but he's a bit of a monster.
Yeah, I'll come and meet him as well because I haven't. Obviously, last time I was over, you didn't have him. You were going to get him. Last time we were building the Vivs last time, so yeah, we hadn't. So I've spoken to guides and trappers that have reported that the eggs are laid between August and October, and babies are found in December to February. It's known, and it's due to them following the wet dry season. See, I don't disagree with that. In my head, that makes sense. I don't know. I've never looked into it, so I can't comment. But that does make sense. And I think the dry season, there's less humidity. And that makes it colder because there's no cloud cover, so the humidity can dissipate, thus was dropping the overall ambience. I think that's how it works. And then in the wet season, there's more cloud cover, so it holds in the humidity. So obviously you're still warmer and humid. That's how my brain works. So that's why when they're wet, they're hot, and when they're dry, they're cold, if that makes sense. And Michael's sort of throwing shade, but he's also not wrong. Best Akis in the UK. From articles I've found and speaking to trappers and guides advising me the best times to see them in the wild. Okay, like I say, it makes sense, but I've personally never. So what's your opinion on that then, Matt? Because obviously this is just spitballing now, but the fact that yours will lay 4 to 5 clutches a year, and you can't seem to stop them, but then they only lay once in the wild.
Yeah, they haven't been before. Yeah.
So why do you think that they lay more? Because I know for a fact you didn't try to like breed, and I know you weren't. They just were breeding. So why do you think that they only do it once in the wild? Do you think there's just the food, the substance of food in the captivity?
I think partly the food, so that they've got a constant supply of food, and at some points I probably was slightly overfeeding them, I suspect. Then on top of that, I generally keep. I know some people have at the time. I do a little bit more now. Obviously, have dry and wet seasons. I generally kept mine quite humid 24/7, so they were on a mister at that point. So the mister was going off. I don't know, rather than doing sort of soaks, it was going off probably 8 times a day, but for shorter periods. So the humidity was constantly like above 80%. And whether it was because I never really let it dry out and it never really dropped. I'm not sure whether that was the case.
So I'm not going to read all this, but I'm just going to leave it on screen if people can read it. I'm going to zoom in. But Eddie has just sent this to me. But I'm not the strongest reader. Oh, God. No, never mind. It's just gone all Pete Tong. But that's how it's staying. Okay. Yeah. So if people want to pause that, let me get rid of the comments. If people want to pause that, they can read that. Yeah. So that's the article on regards to tree monitors being in the brain fart. That's the article on tree monitors having a cut. I think I saw that with Timorensis as well. When I was looking at breeding Timorensis, I saw that they would only have 1 clutch a year, but I'd seen some people had 3 or 4 clutches with them.
I wish, like, you talk at some of the Adactria, people are having like 10, 11 clutches a year.
Yeah.
Which is mental.
Everyone's ready. We're going to still real quick. Buckle up. Okay, Gary, drive safe. Exactly. So many people get wrong and spread it on the internet, and people do reptiles dying due to, as far as viewers. Now the monsters thrive. Yeah, good answers. I sent the article in your DMs. That's the article. Only 7 likes. Hit that like button, y'all. We had 20 people a minute ago, so I appreciate you all. But it's just cool to hang out and talk monitor lizards. You know, I didn't have a guest. I had a guest and then didn't have a guest, and then I was like, well, I wasn't even like, Michael was like, Matt, come on, and then he was like, okay, I'll see what I can do. And now we are talking about lizards. So it makes a lot of sense, but it's just you can't be sure. You have to be really careful when it comes to reptiles and any living animal, really. Yep. Right, what are we doing? The amount of food captive reptiles get compared to wild is probably a factor, even someone who doesn't overfeed. The thing is, when you're in the wild, I imagine in the wet season where it's warmer, in my brain, there's more food. So you've got a stimulus of warmer nights, it's raining, there's more food. So it's probably the females are like, right, okay, I know that I can feed my babies and sustain my babies.
And also, no matter what sort of setup you put in, like I worry that mine don't burn enough energy. Like they're in reasonable size setups, but they're never going to burn the amount of energy they get from shooting up a tree, like and darting, I don't know, 40 foot in the space of no time.
Yeah,
they're never going to burn that sort of.
No, that's why I make Mango run so much.
Yeah.
So I've seen Azakis in person, check. He's very modest. Male is stunning. The female's quite nice too, but yeah, I mean they're just lizards. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Drop them in the chat. But so out of the blues and the blacks, then obviously we're preferring the blacks in the sense of what is it about the blacks outside of how bold they are that you've made you fall in love with so much? Or do you think it's just the fact he's so bold?
The solid black lizard is always so like I've always liked, say for example, black dragon, but that's never realistically going to be an option with the size. And there's something about having a solid black animal, that is very cool.
He didn't want to be my friend when I came to yours last. I was excited to get him to come out because like you send me videos all the time of like your big male. He's even bigger now.
Wasn't keen.
He literally like took one like I was gonna say like me and Fee called it a blip when they stick their tongue out, but he took a blip off my hand and he was like, nah. Just like today. I was like, it's okay. You were like, oh, we'll get him out. I was like, it's okay. He doesn't want to be my friend. But yeah, so I'm excited to come and see them all again because he's a great example as well, like testament to you because you obviously keep up to date with it because sometimes they can be quite drab, but where you have got decent lighting and obviously humidity and stuff, his colors, at least when he's not in shed, the iridescence.
I was going to say, I must admit, the only downside to blacks is the shed. So he's not constantly in shed, but there's always a bit there, and actually it always looks. They never look perfect. Obviously, if you spray them down, they look great. But it's a shame that they can never I never feel like there's a point where they've completely shed free.
Yeah.
And it's just because you notice it so much more, like all a tiny little bit of shed or whatever, and that's it. But yeah, they are very cool.
Right. So we're doing business on YouTube. All jokes aside, if you want to buy an Aki from me, message me on Instagram, just Paul's Monitors. I don't have like a morph market or anything like that. And I have some available at the moment and I have eggs cooking. So I'm about to start going into my wet season. Yes. So in the spring, I start to spray a little bit heavier and then summer I spray every day. And then in autumn, I start to drop it down. And then winter, I only spray twice a week for the most part. You're automated. Oh, they go, Michael's automated. You're automated, aren't you, Matt?
Yeah, so I adjust it occasionally, but all of mine they come on for about 30 seconds at a time, and I think it's I can't remember how many times a day, it's like 7 or 8, and then I adjust it intermittently.
Yeah. You find that because I was contemplating setting up a mister when I build all the big vivs. Do you find it solid because yours is it a homemade one or is it
no? So I did have a Mist King, but I prefer. Oh God, I've forgotten what make it is now. It's gone, but basically, essentially the nozzle. So the nozzles on the Mist King are obviously all plastic,
Yeah.
Whereas these, just the very tip of it is metal. So you can take it off and then just soak it in vinegar or whatever to get rid of all of the lime scale that builds up, and then just put it back on again, which makes life much easier.
Yeah.
And I just use the mister just because I'm lazy and it's easier. But the only one downside is you just have to make sure that you check that there's still enough water in it, because a couple of times if it runs dry, you can end up in a bit of trouble. And touch wood, I've heard people where their mist is just emptied the entire amount in one go. Luckily, the setups are big enough that even if it did, it wouldn't. I mean, it would cause lots of soggy soil, but it wouldn't be a disaster. But touch wood, it's been all right up until now.
Yeah, I do all by hand. And other than Kermit's Viv, it's all been fine. But Kermit's Viv just seems to get sodden, so I need to stop doing his Viv with the hose. But every other Viv seems to be okay. But saying that, I've got 8 inches of soil in Kermit's Viv, so I don't even think it's the level of soil. It's probably just the level of water.
To be fair, I don't have much in mine. I've only got probably, I don't know, 4 inches maybe.
Yeah. I'd have quite. Well, I never used to. I put quite a lot in it this time round to try and combat the water, but
yeah,
I'm still struggling. Paul, what inspired you? And when did you realize your love for reptiles? I don't know. I've loved reptiles forever, like as long as I can remember. And what inspired me in regards to where I am now, I kept seeing lizards in rubbish enclosures, so I decided to put my enclosures on the internet so people could see more rubbish enclosures. That's pretty much the reality of it. I just was sick of seeing monitor keepers gatekeep and loads of kids trying to get into the hobby, and people being like, no, you can't do this. Whereas I will say to you, you can't do this unless you do this, this, and this. But when did you first discover your love for reptiles? Was it from when you were a kid?
So when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a herpetologist when I was younger.
And now look at us, and far removed.
I still remember like your Marco Shays and your all that sort of stuff that used to go on, and like I still sometimes think, wow, should I gone into that as a career? But I think the problem is it's difficult to get into, and you've got to be in the right place at the right time. If you genuinely want to make a career of it, it's quite difficult to do.
We wouldn't be able to have what we have as well, in the sense of the monetary value and time, if we didn't have the careers that we had.
No, exactly.
So good with the bad. But yeah, I wanted to be a herpetologist. I wanted to reptile and amphibian specialist. My dad was like, you need to get yourself a real job, boy. Buck your ideas up.
Exactly.
I was only like 7, like, please, Dad. He's like, no, the world's cruel. It'll chew you up and spit you out. I was like, okay.
I remember going to a vet as work experience, and then all it was cats and dogs. And I was like, I'm not doing this either.
I see a lot of people, they go, I want to be a vet. And then then they have to like put an animal down, and they go, this is not what I signed up for. And I'm like, what did you like expect? Did you think
put a goldfish down at 15, sprayed the water with a bit of a sedative, and then it keeled over. That was my work experience.
The most traumatic death I had as a child was I had stick insects, and my mum they were on the kitchen side, and my mum was cleaning, so she put them up on top of the like extractor fan for the hob, so she could wipe the sides down. And then my dad decided to like, I don't know, make some bacon or whatever, and it just the heat melted the faunarium, and gassed out my stick insects. So they died. What do you guys think about Borneo earless monitors in the pet trade?
That's interesting.
I'll leave it to you first, because you're the one with the illegal Mitchellii.
It's interesting because we the three of us, and I only really met Michael because the original plan was that we were, I was.
Yeah, that's how that group started. Yeah,
I was going to get Borneo, and we thought that we needed some aquatic help.
Yeah, so we now look at us. He just like he's like a leech now, but yeah.
Michael just tells us you can keep goldfish without pumps and in like little glass bowls, and you're fine anyway. So
he recommends them as a beginner goldfish. He says they're great. Yeah. Beginner fish species, sorry. But it's hard, isn't it? Because they shouldn't be here.
No, but they are. They are. Now.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, if you spend ages going, oh, it's not right, it's this, that, and the other, then it doesn't change anything. But if you can get them into the hands of capable keepers that can continue to push the species forward and do great things with the species, I'm all for it. I don't agree at all with any animal being smuggled, but
No.
all animals came from the wild. Half of my collection is wild, legally, but half of my collection is wild. So I can't stand here and go, I don't agree with wild. Dogs came from the wild, you know, so you have to take the good. Again, you have to take the good with the bad, but I don't agree with any animal being inhumanely smuggled.
I certainly don't agree with it still happening, because my understanding is there are people that are still smuggling earless monitors into Europe, and we've got enough now. Like you say, they're here now. That's what's done is done. Don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily agree with it, but we don't need to keep smuggling more in. There's plenty of people that are now having success in breeding them.
Yeah, people should. If you want a captive bred animal, if you want a pet, sorry, and it's just a pet, you should go for a captive bred animal if the option's available. If you've got a wild caught animal, ideally you should try and breed it, especially if it's been smuggled. You shouldn't just keep that in a box just to keep it as a pet. You should try and find someone to breed it. That's my opinion on the situation. But if the animal's come out of the wild and you're going to give it an amazing home for the rest of its life, I think that's better than it being stuck in 100%. A rub. Yeah, so I remember the feeling the first time I interacted with Kermit is such an experience. Yeah, it's because he's a beast. Thanks for having this conversation. Appreciate it. I'll get you back on at some point, Eddie, and we'll get real deep. When did you realize your love? When did you realize your over for reptiles, your love for reptiles, and how do you afford the amount of lizards? I don't afford the amount of lizards I own. I'm in crippling debt, and I have a decent job. And that's pretty much it, really. Have you seen or noticed a difference in pupil colors of blacks? Some have brown pupils, some have pure black. Oh, that's a good one.
I have, and I forget which ones, because I've forgotten which one mine are. But some of them, like you say, they are red or brown, and then some have jet black pupils. Now mine have, I believe, black pupils, but I've seen others that have this like reddy browny color. Now I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know. I don't know much about it, to be fair.
I didn't even know that was a thing, if I'm honest.
I'll see if I can. I wonder if have I got any pictures of mine on there.
If you have, send them to me on Instagram, and I'll be able to get them up.
Let me see.
Yeah, it's fine. So monitors are the best pet reptiles in the world. Fact. Monitors are the best reptiles in the world. I'll just go through these comments, and if, like I say, if you find pictures, then just send them to me on Instagram. I've always wanted an Aki. Wish I could buy one of his. Sadly, you're on the opposite side of the world. I've got a mister on my frillies, pink tongues, mountain horn dragons, and just bumped them up a little, and I still hand mist. I use an auto. Yeah, I prefer hand misting because it gives you a good level of interaction. But when you're busy, I imagine it's a lot harder.
I've sent it on Instagram.
Okay, I'll get that up now.
It's just the picture of the two babies I've got, but they've both got black eyes. But I noticed the ones from, is it Southampton? I forget which ones it is now, but they definitely had reddish tinge.
Oh God, I can't work my laptop. Literally, I never use Instagram on my laptop. Can you go away, please? No, apparently not. Right, bear with me, everyone. I'm running into technical difficulties, and I'm gonna bring up these pictures. There you go. Okay, just leaking. I don't know if you can all see that, but we're leaking my DMs right now. We try and zoom in. I don't know how grainy it. That's. Oh, I can see a bit more. That's the most I can zoom in. I don't know if we can even see it. Let me go back. Okay, we can't see it. Thank God for that. Otherwise, my DMs would have been leaked. So yeah, that's the. Appreciate you stopping in as well, Ben. Thank you for hanging around. I appreciate the support. So what are you saying? I have to get closer. Look, they're like brownie. I mean, look on my phone rather than on the screen.
So they've got almost like black eyes, but I'll see if I can find a picture. Some of them have red.
Oh, okay. I can see on my phone a lot clearer than I can on the computer, to be fair. Yeah, I see what you're saying. They've got black pupils and they've got like a little bit on the outside. So yeah, I can see what you're saying with that. Okay, Michael, you can become my like admin manager if you want. Where would I pick up? It depends where you're based, Jack. Whereabouts in the UK are you based? But yes, you can pick up from IHS in September. But yeah, right, okay. I think we're there for comments. But yeah, I do really like the black trees. The black trees for me, I think could be if I kept them, because it's different looking at them and keeping them. But like living vicariously through you, I think black trees could be my favorite. Newcastle, yeah. So I'd have to meet you at.
Who do you support, Jack?
Okay, here we go. Here we go. This is out of the realms of me even understanding.
There's two options, probably. One is incorrect.
I didn't realize you were a fan, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm going up next week.
Yeah, no, that's how I knew that.
Yeah,
that's how I found out you were a fan. Because obviously that whole thing on the transpires, I didn't realize.
Yeah, I don't know how. Just because I'm brought up in North Devon, but I think it's just because back when I was young, it was sort of Kevin Keegan, and we're actually half decent then.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Michael loves talking about football.
We're not talking about Michael's lived. He set this whole podcast up, and he's like, "No, it's gone. No, don't take it to this." Okay, Jack's
it's the correct choice. It's all right.
That's right, Jack.
I was a bit worried he was going to say the alternative.
I don't know what's the alternative. I don't know.
Sunderland.
Oh, okay, yeah, I haven't got a clue. That one day you'll be able to buy a prasinus from Matt, Jack, so you're fine. You're safe. Let's talk about these yellow tree monitors. Close, no cigar. You want them? You don't want them? I know you've got no space, but
if I had the space, I wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
And I think my problem is you have to find the right ones. So there are a few breeders who have very nice
Should we bring up
Rizingeri?
Chris's Instagram page?
So Chris has got very nice Rizingeri.
Bear with me, everyone.
And there are a few others that also have nice ones. There are equally, though, a few pairs that are less nice. One of which, I say that, I don't think the pair is still alive, actually. I think the pair that was less nice, I think, has now died.
Yeah, I think so too.
But yeah, I think the key is getting nice animals and see them in person. So I've seen these in person, and it's like with everything, cameras never do them justice, and that people go, oh, they just look like slightly yellower greens. And there are lots that have this sort of almost like lime tinge to them. And I'm not a big fan of them, but I've seen them in person. And beforehand, I was very much like, oh, I don't really need them. They're just slightly different greens, but actually they are stunning. And I 100% would get them if I could, if they're available and I had the space. But at the minute, neither of that is the case.
Yeah.
But they are stunning. And they're proper yellow, not sort of lime green. Because I think there was a pair that I ummed and ahed about how long ago was it now? 2 years ago, I think, that came up on Pre-Loved.
Yeah, I remember that one. We were unsure on the sexes.
Yeah, and they'd never made.
Did you ever find out?
So the girl that sold them, I messaged, it must have been months ago now, and asked her about it, and she knows who's got them. As far as I'm aware, they still haven't bred. So I still don't know because the problem was they were, when they first came to her, they were overweight. So they'd been fed, I think, predominantly on mice and whatever else. So it was really difficult to tell the sexes. They'd never cycled. They'd never, as far as I'm aware, I can't remember if the previous owner said they'd had eggs or not. I'm not sure. But they'd certainly never.
I think they said that they did. No, they had a lock. No, they had a lock. And we were saying about my prasinus that had a lock.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
but
I remember that.
I never saw them in person, but they looked a bit lime green. And I have spoken to someone who's seen them in person, and they were more lime green. Now, don't get me wrong, if that's your thing, that is. But if I was going to get Rizingeri, I'd have to get proper yellows, like Chris's.
Yeah. Chris's are nice, to be fair to him. I'm sure he won't mind me using his stuff as well. But yeah, just quick, Jack. Like I say, message me on Instagram, Paul's Monitors. And I can answer all your questions. But for a baby, you want a 4x2x2, ideally a 6x2x2 for an adult, or like a 5x2x2 as a minimum, ideally. And I'm going to the reptile show in Milton Keynes in September. So if you are going to the reptile show in September, I will be there and I can sell you a baby. Jobyensis. I love Jobyensis. They're so rare. They used to be here. Not so much anymore.
I think there's only 2 males that I know of. There was a rumor that there was a female knocking about a few months ago, but I don't think that ever materialized.
Yeah.
You have to import. I was briefly talking to someone about importing some from Europe for a while, but then it all sort of petered out. But the
How
problem
much
is
are they in Europe? 2.5?
2.5. They wanted 2,500 euros per animal, and in my opinion, they weren't the nicest ones I'd ever seen. They were sort of rather being that sort of like lime green, bright yellow. They were sort of the grey ones, which they're nice. Don't get me wrong, and I still wouldn't say no to them. But 2,500 is a lot of money.
And then you got to buy 2.
Well, you got to buy 3, really, haven't you?
Yeah.
Really.
And then they're related. So it's like,
Yeah.
so you've got to buy 1 or 2, ideally 2, from 2 breeders. So you're talking 10,000 euros plus
in my
imports.
opinion, I would be buying them as a pet because I like them. I don't think the market would be here if you wanted to make money. Because I don't think people see them. I don't get it why. I prefer them, to be honest, over some prasinus with the pattern. But for
I
whatever
prefer them
reason,
to majority of prasinus.
The market just doesn't seem to be there for them. Yeah, no, 2.5K for babies.
Yeah, euros.
Yeah.
There were babies here again in the heyday before I was keeping monitors in like 13, 15. I think they were like 800, 700, 800.
I think a lot of them went back to Europe, unfortunately.
Yeah.
There was lots of stuff that went back to Europe before Brexit.
Because like you say, people just doing some Jobyensis. Like, so for me, in order of tree monitors would be the nicest Jobyensis, then really nice prasinus, then black trees, then blue trees, then yellow trees, out in the common 5. What about you?
McRae has always been top for me. So I think McRae 1. I would have previously said prasinus 2, but I'm starting to prefer Beckerite. So I'd probably go McRae 1, Beckerite 2. And then I'd always say 3 for prasinus, but then part of me thinks I would prefer Beckerite. Sorry, not Beckerite, Biax. But is that just, or Jobyensis? But is that just because they're not attainable at the minute?
It's hard because I think Jobyensis. I'm just bringing up one of your tree monitors, but
I sell my kidney for a golden spotted.
We'll get that up in a minute. I'll find him. I'm getting him back on at some point. He never really posts pictures of them. So that's one of your baby blues. Absolutely stunning animal. The thing is with them though, like, when you rate an animal, it's easy to rate it just on its looks, but like Jobyensis, I think are quite shy, whereas black trees, Beckerite, they seem to be very bold. So obviously as a captive, black trees might not look as nice. Obviously we're talking splitting hairs here, but if it's a better captive, then obviously, and until you keep it, you don't know. So like you were saying, the blues are quite shy, definitely as babies in comparison to prasinus. So if someone can't decide between a blue and a green, that can be the deciding factor, but obviously you don't know until you've kept them.
And obviously there'll be variability in whatever you've got. So some people 100%. Have like McRae that come out and do whatever you want, and mine will now, but it's just taken a lot more work.
Yeah.
And I think that's just because McRae, I think as a whole, I think are generally closer to wild caught specimens, is my understanding. Whereas a lot of prasinus, there probably might be a few more generations down the line potentially.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll Gary's going to send me a message about his willy apparently. I'm gonna talk as I'm bringing. What was I bringing up? Oh yeah, Bohemi. But yeah, I'll get a picture of Kermit up in a minute for those people that don't know. So like my sarong, prasinus, he's got to be wild caught purely because of his colours. But then you get some tree monitors, some green tree monitors, and they're literally just like a drab green. And like you say, it's different levels. It's hard to comprehend a species when some are so nice and others are really, really drab. So it's hard. Right, let me bring this up right now because everyone wants to see this. There they are.
So my honest opinion is I think they are really wanted because they are unattainable. Do they look nicer than some of the other tree monitors? Honestly, I'm not sure they do. Because actually, if you look at them, they almost, this is going to be a controversial opinion, but I'll say it anyway. They almost look a bit like, you know, the Crutchfields have got that cross
The
between
hybrid, yeah.
The hybrid between the black, is it black and green?
I think it's a black and green, yeah.
They almost look a bit like that. Now, I'm not saying that's ugly, but I don't know. I think people want them because there's just none of them about.
Yeah, they're on the pedestal. So,
but yeah, if anyone's got one, I'll buy it off you
tomorrow. What is your favorite monitor that you own? 1 species and then 2 individual.
So I think it will probably always be the prasinus because it's my first, from a species point of view, it's the first tree monitor I ever had. I never thought I'd ever actually be able to own them. And as a result of that, I think it will always be them. Single animal, at the moment, probably on the basis of personality, is probably Tongue, my male Beckerai.
Yeah, he's a beast. He really is a special animal. Like, he is pretty cool. For me, my favorite species that I own right now probably is prasinus for the same reasons I've always wanted them. They were my first tree monitors. And then my favorite animal is mango, my mangrove, always and forever in my heart. Apparently there's plenty more of them, and the blues are actually more rare. The range of gold spots is a lot larger than all the tree monitors except the green. In the sense of in the wild, I assume. Yeah, because I know there are a few keepers of them scattered around here and there that are super secretive. But
there's a few in Europe, isn't there? As far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I think they only sell to people that are like, like it's like
you've got to be in the group.
It's like being a bloody stonemason and you need a secret handshake so everyone understands that you're a Bohemii keeper. So you're just like, oh, you've got some of those. But yeah,
I'm not sure we'll ever see them in the UK anytime soon. I think we might, if they can captive breed them, which my understanding is they have, or in the process.
I've heard that there's been captive bred babies in Europe. I've heard.
Yeah, I've never seen them or seen evidence of it, but I have been told that that's the case. And I think if that is the case, then we will eventually see them. Yeah. Just I don't think they'll be hideous amounts of money. I think they were about 15 grand, something like that, in the US when they came.
See, I've heard mixed opinions on this. I've heard that it was, I could be getting this wrong. I've heard that 15 grand was the pair that's recently sold. But apparently, if you know people, you can get them a lot cheaper. But that's also like saying, I don't know, you want to buy my first ever captive bred mangrove. I'm realistic. I'm going to sell it to you cheaper because I know you. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. You know, like if my brother wanted to buy a lizard off me, I'm not going to go, right, okay, that's £1,000 or whatever. It's my brother. I'm like, okay, just have the lizard. So you can't say that just because you know someone, they're cheaper. So to the general public, that's what it was.
It is possible, Michael. It's definitely possible.
Wonder if it's possible to import bicycles. Yeah. Well, I know some people with babies, and there you go. So Eddie, message Matt. Matt, use your infinite funds to import them over, and then you'll have them.
The problem you have is you need to find someone who is reliable enough that you can give them a considerable sum of money and that you can get all the paperwork done correctly. Because a lot of people as well don't realise that it's actually quite difficult to get paperwork. So I won't name names, but there are a few people that keep continuously telling me that they're going to import some stuff from Canada or America, and it's good. They've given them these prices, and that this is what it's going to cost. And actually, a lot of people don't realise that you got the price of the animal, you've got import tax, you've got CITES. There's a lot of extra fees on top. If I won the lottery tomorrow and could quite easily throw away 20 grand, and if it didn't come off, then I could probably get some in fairly easily. But again, it would be all dependent on the person that's selling them, whether they are legit or not. And I don't know enough people well enough in Europe to be able, especially at the moment, to be able to give someone, I don't know, 10 grand and say, sort it out.
Yeah, ever since now we can't just drive to Ham and pick them up ourselves. I don't think it's worth the risk.
You can, and people do, but it will
Yeah.
come back to bite them in the arse at some point, and that is not worth the risk.
That's the problem. It's hard, isn't it? Because if you're doing it with like, I don't know, a $400 or euro mangrove, you'd still the repercussions are still the same. But you'd be real nervous driving with like a £15,000 lizard smuggled in your boot.
I mean, it could become very, very painful. I mean, I could lose my job potentially if I got caught.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is just not worth the risk.
Oh no, definitely not. Like, never say never. You have Michelai, arguably. I generally can't think of a rarer legal species in the UK than Michelai.
Depends, I guess, because there's probably fewer. No, actually, probably not, because they're not technically legal anyway. Earless monitor. No, I know a few people with earless monitors. Yeah, there's probably not much really.
I think they probably are the rarest. I don't know who this is. Manfred Resingeri. Is he the guy that discovered yellows? I don't know. I should know stuff like that, but I don't. I seem to have bred them. Are we still talking about the Bahemi? I forgot what we're talking about. I don't understand how you only have 1.32. Oh wow, I didn't even realize I had that many subs. YouTube is a very saturated market, like so it's hard to grow. Lace. Oh, that's a good shout. I know of free
lace. I know free lace monitors. I suspect there are more.
Yeah.
I know of free people who, well, they're not free people, but I know of free lace monitors where people are open about them.
Yeah, I know free lace monitors. Well, do the three you know about the same guy or two different people?
Two different people.
Yeah, I know two different people.
Yeah. And also, because I've been told that if you've got the money, you can buy a Komodo dragon.
Yeah, me too.
There are people out there. I think going rate was 25,000. I think I was.
Yeah. I need to get your link. I was quoted 30. So you've got well, this is it. When you know people, you know people. So
yeah, 25 grand for a Komodo. I think a few of them have been stolen as well, is my understanding.
Yeah, there's a couple of zoos that I think I've had them in the past that I've either got them or bred them, and then just said a few babies have died, and then sold them. At least so I've heard. I don't know if any.
I know a lot. Again, this isn't necessarily, but a lot of zoos will often have because obviously zoos can't sell to the public, is my understanding. So often you'll find that a lot of zoos, the animals will be in the keeper's names, so they're technically private.
Yeah.
And then they can work around it that way. But yeah, like you say, they'll breed stuff and say that it died, and then stuff will appear.
Savannah monitors are allowed in the UK, and they're fucking everywhere.
And they should stop being imported.
They should stop.
I think of all the monitors, stop importing Savannah monitors.
Yep, 100% agree. They make terrible captives because they take so much space, time, and no one feeds them properly. So
get them from if you're gonna get a Savannah monitor, go buy it from a proper breeder. Like, is it Dean Cheetham? Someone who does it properly, captive bred. Yes, you'll pay a bit more, but you'll get a far better animal, and you just need to stop these. There's a few shops that have picked them up recently again. I just don't agree with it at all. Why are we still getting wild caught Savannah monitors coming in? Is just madness.
I don't want to quote his exact prices, but I generally believe that Dean Cheetham's true captive bred Savannahs are £150.
Is that it?
I think so.
It's not even a lot, is it? Because you're talking, what are they now, 50, 60 quid?
They're 75 to 100 normally in a pet shop. 75 to 100 normally, but you can pick them up for like 50 quid. Especially in like 4 or 5 months' time from now, you'll be able to get them for like 30, 40 quid.
I mean, I'll be honest, I don't think Savannahs make great pets anyway, because I don't think people realise the size they get. They think they're just slightly bigger ackies, and you get a male and it's like
4 foot.
4 foot, and you've had it.
Yeah, they get huge. What I'll do is I'll send you a video on Instagram, because then I can bring it up rather than show the camera. But I took a video, and I'm so glad I did, from like years and years and years ago, of a just shy 4 foot Savannah to a baby. And and you can see.
Oh, is that the one where it's, yeah, I remember you showing me this.
You can see the difference. So what I'll do is I'll bring it up on Instagram. It's sending to you once it's sent to you. But yeah, they take a lot of space. They take a lot of food. Like I have one. I don't want one, but I have one. Like it's quite a nice animal. But for the most part, it's all right. Okay, it's sent. Let me bring up my messages. I'll go off so I don't leak my messages again because, not that I've got anything in there. I just
don't feed it rats.
Don't feed it rats ever feed it rats. Always feed it bugs for the most part. Right, I'm gonna. Oh, we've got sound. Bear with me.
You've grown.
Can we hear that? Can we not hear that?
2 years. Not even 2 years.
That's how big they get in a couple of years.
How you've grown.
So that's my old Savannah, and that's this old shanty and custom
2
enclosure.
years. Not even 2 years difference. How
you sound like you're about 12 in that video.
I probably was. Right, we need to stop it now. Oh God, let's continue playing. Stop. I don't want to listen to 15-year-old me. All right, we're just going to close Instagram. Okay, Instagram is gone. We can never bring it back ever again. But yeah, Savannahs, they're not great. They take a lot. I was going to ream someone today. I'll ring someone today about a Savannah being fed rats and realised it was a black throat. Yeah, I mean, don't attack people anyway because it's don't get me wrong. It's good to educate, but as soon as you say to someone like, "Oh, you shouldn't," you should just show people mine because mine's skinny. Until Bumpy was being like, "What the hell?"
I think the problem is if you look at all monitors, I suspect. I hate to think what percentage are overweight. The majority are realistically. A lot of mine, I would say, a bit overweight, a bit on the podgy side.
Yeah, mine for the most part. Most of my animals, outside of my mangroves and baby stuff, are probably podgy. My Savannah's not bad, but it's definitely still podgier than it needs to be.
And once it's gained the weight, you're in a hiding to none to try and get it to lose the weight.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Flashbacks to my young. I don't even know how old I was in that video. Maybe 22, maybe. It's like 7-8 years ago. Oh, I'm getting old now. Right, we are encroaching to the 3-hour mark, so we probably will start to wrap up. But I appreciate you for coming on.
No, not at all. It's been good fun.
It's been good. I said to you, I didn't know what we were going to talk about, and we've sort of spoke about everyone. So I hope everyone's liked this. If there's any final questions, drop them now, or forever hold your peace. Well, I'm sure we'll get Matt back on at some point. I've been pestering you to come on for ages, and you kept saying no.
Tell you about all my royal racks.
Yeah,
I keep
that is just royals behind the camera.
Yeah.
So I think it's fair to say that all animals are overweight compared to the wild counterparts. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. But I appreciate you all for coming in. It's not quite 3 hours yet, Gary, but it'll be in 20 minutes' time. It'll be 3 hours. But it's easy because Matt and myself know each other, so this is very much just easy talking. Yeah, just talk about monitors and monitors. What's the secret to becoming a tree monitor god? I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know. I've got no idea.
No, I think
I would say there's one person in the UK, and I won't say who it is, who I would say, in my eyes, is a god of tree monitors.
Yeah, I think Eddie would know who that was, and if you know, you know. Me,
in my opinion, yeah. I think there's one person that I think can safely say has pretty much done most of what you can.
Yeah,
and has been doing it for years, knows his stuff, and is which is the bonus is a very friendly and a
nice guy, very nice guy.
Which is,
and I'm going to give it away now. If you do know him, very tall, a very tall man, a very, very, very tall man, nearly a foot taller than myself. So, what's up, guy with scales? Appreciate you stopping in. Hope your prasinus is doing well. But yeah, it's been good just to talk, because normally we speak every day on message, but normally if we end up speaking on the phone, we end up speaking for about 3 hours on the phone anyway.
Yeah.
So this has just been a public phone conversation.
Normally it's, am I about to make a massive mistake in buying this?
Yeah, pretty much. One of us is buying something and we need the other one to stop us.
And it's J-Man. With me getting a new edition in 2 weeks' time.
Exactly. I couldn't talk you out of it either. To be fair, I didn't even try and talk you out of it. I was like, yeah, buy them.
To be fair, my decision was made.
Yeah. You didn't even go, oh, do you think I should? You were like, I'm buying these. I was like, oh, cool. I love it. I said it earlier, these Sunday lives. The Fellowship of the Varanus. Yeah, man.
Definitely.
Excuse me. Yeah, I'll be live next Sunday. I don't know if I do or don't have a guest yet. Worst case, I just go solo. But it helps having someone to bounce off of. But yeah, I'm going to hit you with the wrap-up questions, and if there's any final questions, and Paul's new discussion. I don't know what my new discussion was. He was so tall. I couldn't believe how tall he was. He's the tallest man I've ever met. He's not the tallest man I've ever met, but he was a very tall man.
Everyone's tall when you're 4 foot.
It's very true. It's hard being a hobbit. But my hairy feet.
I'm not much taller.
No, you're only probably about that much taller than me. But my hairy feet will make me loads of money, and I'll be able to buy loads of lizards, and everyone will be jealous of me then. So that's why you just get yourself a tall girlfriend. Fee's like 5'10", so she can reach all the stuff off the top shelf, and then I get all the stuff off the bottom shelf. So it works out. The photos you were sending earlier on. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's gone. I've spoken about it now. It's gone. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on. I love your videos. Continue doing what you're doing. Huge role model to me. I absolutely love your vids. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Okay. Wrap up questions. Piece of advice. One piece of advice.
I realised you were going to ask me this and I didn't prepare anything.
This is your fault. You had time.
I know. Because every time when you ask it, I'm always like, shit, what would I say? I don't know.
And now you're here in the chair being asked. And we can't even cut this because it's live. Normally I can cut it and edit it for guests, but sadly I cannot. But what's the one piece of advice you would give to someone starting the reptile hobby?
I think it's probably has been said before, but I think it's don't buy what people say is a starter animal. Don't if someone tells you, oh, I don't know, don't get that, get a bearded dragon because that's a starter animal. If you don't want a bearded dragon, there's no point buying a bearded dragon. And actually, most animals with a bit of research and some knowledge, most people can keep realistically. I know some people say tree monitors are really delicate and all that, but realistically, if you can provide the basic care, it's not that difficult. And actually, if you want a tree monitor and you don't want a bearded dragon, then save, do your research and get a tree monitor. Don't buy an animal that you're probably going to have for a year and then be like, wow, it's a bit boring now. I don't really want that. Because we've all done it. I did it. I'll be honest.
Me too.
And then you end up with an animal that you don't really want. I think just stick to what you want. If that's what you've always wanted, go for that. Do your research. And if you think that you don't know enough, just the information is out there. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of misinformation out there. And if you go down the route of asking a question that you sort of know the answer to, but you want the opposite, so whether that's, is this big enough, is the classic one. If you're asking, is this big enough, it probably means in your head that you realise it's not big enough.
100%.
So yeah, that would probably be it, I think. So
on that then, Mike has said, so you're telling him he should get a croc monitor for his first
100%,
monitor?
100%.
See,
if it kills you, it kills you. You learned, didn't you?
Live and live by. If it kills you, you didn't do enough research, and that's on you. So there you go. Or what about a Komodo?
Komodo. I mean,
if you got 25 grand,
I think a Komodo would be easier to look after than a croc monitor.
Yes,
I think croc monitor is much scarier.
Yeah, for sure. They're a lot more athletic. For sure. Okay, thank you. It's been a sick podcast. Don't worry, Matt. I haven't forgot. We're going to hit you with the hardest question of all time.
Yeah, this is the one that I never flip in.
But yeah, so what's the one piece of advice that you would give? What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Let's put it that way. Not reptile related.
Not reptile related. I honestly don't know. I knew this was coming as well. I've been thinking about this for the last hour.
Michael did say, to be fair, you didn't have a lot of time to prepare because you sort of like agreed to come on like 2 hours before I went live. So fair play.
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to pass on that one, I think.
But on the question before, I heard someone the other day say, how did they word it? They don't like the term hardy species because it just means they're harder to kill.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is so true when you put it that way. Don't get me wrong, it's good because if you're a beginner and you don't want your pet to die, getting one that is tolerant of mistakes is obviously ideal. But then there are things, if you want to beard a dragon, if you don't want to beard a dragon, there are things like Akis, there are things like jeweled lacertas, there are things like Uromastics, there are things like bloody collared lizards, you know, Sudan plated lizards that I keep talking about that I'm never going to get again. And then, like you say,
the broad thing, I mean, it's very vague, but it's basically everyone makes mistakes. I've made look like both, whether it's in life or reptiles, I've made mistakes here, like that you beat yourself up about it. I don't know whether it's your basking temp gets too hot or they get, well, I had one issue where one of them got out or one of them got stuck behind a UV, whatever it is, like everyone makes them and you beat yourself up about it and you think, what an idiot, why did I do that? And you keep it for absolutely ages, but actually everyone's got to come from somewhere. I don't think there's a single person who keeps reptiles who's gone, I've nailed it every single time. I've never had an issue. I've never had anything get out. I think you're just, well, you're lying if that is.
Yeah, you are lying if you say that. Completely off subject, but we have to address the elephant in the room. People who like flowers pick them. People who love flowers water them full burrows every podcast in 2023. Fuck you.
Can you ban him?
I hope so. I sort of need it. To be fair, he's like getting me sales in the chat, so I sort of need him. But he's annoying little flea. It's just always there. What was I gonna say? Yeah, that quote stuck with me. I've been telling it to all my kids all week. So there you go. Well, that has pretty much been this podcast. I don't know how to end it. So what it might happen, Matt, is it might kick you, and then
that's right.
If it does kick you, either feel free to call me or we'll just call it a night, and I'm sure I'll speak to you tomorrow
just message
anyway.
You on, Facebook Messenger or whatever.
Just quickly, Jack, you can have Savannah monitors in the UK. Paul has one. They're called Boss monitors. Apparently, they are called Boss monitors. Yeah. I have a Savannah. She's an absolute sweetheart. I think that quote every time I see kids picking dandelions. Yeah, kids are little shits. You're killing me. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend a Boss monitor. Mind, they don't make the best pets in the world. They need a lot of space. Leech, flea. Is that even how you spell leech? Is that how you spell leech? Does leech have an E at the end?
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does it? I'm sure it doesn't.
That seems weird to me. I'm not mugging you off, Michael. I'm just because I can't spell. So in my head, I'm like, I've been spelling leech. Anyway,
remember the IQ in Scotland's a bit lower than it is everywhere else in the UK.
Yeah, taking Jobies or whatever the fuck they fucking do over there. Scottish spelling. See, Phenos.
Yeah, I don't know any foreign languages.
No, I don't speak. I'm not fluent in Scottinese. All right, here comes the dick pics, Paul. Appreciate you, Gary. I'll stay in the loft while you send them, so Fee doesn't have to be exposed to that. But yeah, keep calling the boss. They are boss. Yeah. No, it was a misspell, just like Harry Potter. Yeah. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Matt, for coming on. Thank you for being my friend. And having to listen to me and deal with me and all my life troubles. And Michael as well. I'm sure he'll be on it at some point. But thank you for having to, because we've been talking now for 3 years. Maybe?
It must be 3 years because it would have been not long after I got my prasinus, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've been talking for a while now. Generally don't remember how we started speaking. I do remember lowballing you on your Akis on pre-loved.
I was trying to remember.
But I don't remember.
Was it before then or after? Because I remember, I was selling my Akis.
We just started speaking because I was like, haha, I'm messaging you on Facebook. We just started speaking. And I lowballed you on your Akis and you were like, nah, bruv, they're worth way more than that. I was like, I'm a good home, I swear.
That's a different, that I could talk about that for 2 hours about my current mind space at the time of selling those Akis and what I was involved with.
Yeah. Good job, Matt. Fee says you did good. I don't use the word jobbies. Some of us up north have some culture. But yeah, so next podcast live next Sunday, 8 p.m, same time. I don't know if it'll be a 3-hour podcast. I said to Fee, I was like, it's a solo one tonight. I'll probably only be doing it for about an hour. And then you come on. There were 2 hours and 50 minutes talking about monitors. But I've really enjoyed this one, actually.
Yeah, so definitely.
I really appreciate your time, wisdom, and knowledge. And at some point, I'm going to come over and admire your animals in real life rather than just in videos. But
and then buy your own Mitchell.
I need to. Never trust Paul's times. Right. Paul's a bad person. Right, everyone. Like I say, thank you very much. Matt's link is in the description. He doesn't post nowhere near enough, but he definitely should because he's got some of the nicest animals in the country, if I say so myself. Especially the Mitchellai. We haven't got it up. I haven't really had it up enough. We need the Mitchellai. Everyone as well, please. It's cringy and I don't like it, but it does help me out. So like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you. I've just dedicated 3 hours of my life. I mean, it's not hard for me. I've enjoyed it, but I've just dedicated 3 hours of my life. Yeah. So for you guys to get some hidden monitor knowledge that I don't know if you do or didn't get from this, but hopefully everyone's enjoyed. You seem to all have enjoyed. Again, thank you very much, Matt, for coming on. I said this to Fee. I said that he's never voice noted ever. So I don't think Michael knows what he sounds like. So be the first time. You said one video where you were talking to the big male blue tree.
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
That's the only time that your voice has ever been in group chat.
I've never voice noted.
And then here you are, like 3 hours later, just constantly. Michael's just been like, but yeah. See everyone next time. Thank you for actually tuning in this time, Gary. I look forward to seeing your Willy pictures. Thank you, Jack. I'm going to try and end this now, and hopefully I'm still in with Matt. If not, thank you, Matt, and I'll message you afterwards.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you. Pause monitors out.